Jian Wushuang began to look for it, the original heart that had long been forgotten by himself, and did not know where it was going. Time passed, and in the blink of an eye, thousands of years passed. Jian Wushuang is still immersed in the search for the initial heart, and is caught in the deepest level of understanding, and the outside world has changed a lot. The biggest change in the Xingkong Ancient Road is that the prisoner dragon continuously challenged the 8 giants, winning 8 battles and winning 8. After reaching the Xingkong Ancient Road, he was the first person in 8 cities and crowned the new king. Xingkong Ancient Road, the 18th city, is also the last city of Xingkong Ancient Road. A grand ceremony for the crowning of a new king is beginning. The prison dragon sits on a throne. Except for the Lord Blue, the other 8 giants are sitting under him, some with flattering expressions, some with expressionless faces, and others with overcast faces. Sunny, the overlord, is also in it, but at this moment, there is still a bit of overbearing majesty on his face, and the Een is extremely extreme, and he keeps his head down and says nothing. Last time, the two played against each other in Overlord's shrine, and ended with his defeat. Under the strange power of the prisoner dragon, his indestructible domineering body that repressed the heavens was actually suppressed and died, and he was not the opponent of the prisoner dragon at all. In the end, I had to inform Jian Wushuang's whereabouts, and after the prisoner dragon destroyed his overlord shrine, he left with a big wave. You guys don't hide it. This time it is difficult for everyone to hold the new king's coronation ceremony. Otherwise, with this modest and low-key personality, where would you like this extravagance? The prison dragon tilted his head, supported the throne with his right elbow, supported his chin on the back of his hand, and said with a smile. The expressionless giants such as Bawang, the chief of the Mola tribe, and the Jiuxing Shengzi heard the words, all of which were drawn from the corner of their mouths. They have seen it. How shameless this prisoner is. But they were silent and did not say anything. They knew that the prison dragon suddenly summoned them up. Naturally not for the purpose of witnessing his ascension to the throne so simple. There must be some plans. The young emperor of the great divine kingdom, the young prince who greatly enshrines the kingdom of God, the blood of the blood temple, and the demon lord of the red sun, all have a coquettish face, and when they heard it, they laughed quickly. Naturally, the strong ones live here, and the prisoner dragon is superior in strength, so he should have sat on this throne. These people announced that they had taken refuge in prison dragons long after they lost the 8 giants in a row. Upon hearing this, prison dragon laughed and said, 4 of you are still sensible. Chapter 4281. The first is more. What? Jiuxing Shengzi, overlord, and others heard that their faces changed suddenly. Sealing the steel is their sole purpose of coming to Xingkong Ancient Road. To seal the steel they paid too much. Now handing over the function tablet is not the same as the operation of the ancient road in Xingkong over the years. This prison dragon has such a big appetite. Master prisoner dragon, forgive me for not being able to surrender the function monument. Jiuxing Shengzi pressed down the anger in his heart and arched back. Oh, then you just don't give this face to this seat? Prison dragon twisted his neck and made a kakaka sound. The great prince and young emperor, who stood on his side, suddenly took a cold light in his eyes. I felt a blast of coldness and rushed at them. The Jiuxing Shengzi, overlord, and the chief of the demon lord Luo changed their faces, and the most irritable demon lord of the demon lord, when they shot the case in front of them, stared at the prisoner with a dead eye, and said, Prisoner, you don't go too far, it's up. The 2 Jiuxing Shengzi and the overlord also got up and stood up, standing behind the patriarch of Moruoshao, exuding their own coercion. When the prisoner saw this, the smile on his face gradually converged, and he said indifferently, How about too much? But not too much. The words fell. Prison dragon shot violently, a chain lazing from his back, and flung it towards the neck of the chief of the Luo family. Good job. The devil Luo tribe burst into a drink, and the sturdy tree-like arms blasted out instantly, carrying the horrific force and banging towards this chain. The demon's Luo family only repaired magical powers, born with divine power, and their horror was extremely extreme. I saw this punch blow out, and the smashing void suddenly shook. This fist is enough to capsize the mountains and the sea, and the earth splits. Ha! I saw the clash of the two, and gave out a huge bang, and the horrible fist force broke the chain of chains. The prisoner licked the corner of his mouth, and made a hissing sound. After waiting for the fist of the Emo Luo tribe to exhaust his strength, hundreds of chains had floated behind him and blasted at him again. Just when the two were about to start a world-fighting war, the 9-star prince immediately said, "Moro, don't be reckless. I will not retreat before being a prisoner of dragons." Looking at the hundreds of chains that came crashing, Moro's face was cloudy for a while, and he knew that the prison dragon had not yet really shot. He groaned and yelled again, using the power of Moro to blast these chains again. After shattering, he stepped harder and swept away. The king of overlords and Jiao Xingxingzi were equally ashamed. Each performed a secret technique, and left in an instant. Watching the disappearance of the three people, the big prince and the blood sun standing on both sides of the prison dragon were about to chase them, and then saw the prison dragon waving his hand, and said lazily, "Let them go. Anyway, now they are far from the universe, there will be tens of thousands of years for the Grand Clan event. If they all die, who will bring fun to this seat?" "Yes." The granddaughter of the grandma and others laughed. The prisoner dragon looked up and looked at the overlord and other people who had turned into small black spots in the sky, and there was a hint of playfulness in his eyes. At the same time, outside the ancient sky in the sky, because of the death of Jian Wushuang, the whole universe has been surging. Life Shrine, Supreme Shrine. The Supreme Master Xiebua and the Great Axe sat in the main seat, and several men in black, who were in charge of inquiring about the news of the prisoner dragon, had returned, kneeling respectfully at the feet of the two. "Return to the Supreme Bloodwave Supreme, the Great Axe Supreme. I have found the news about the prisoner dragon." "Huh, let's talk in detail." The Bloodwave Supreme and the Great Axe looked at each other, and there was a cold flash in his eyes, and he said coldly, "Yes." These men in black bowed their heads and narrated quickly. After a scent of incense, a few people in black turned into black shadows, and then left the Supreme Temple. In the Supreme Shrine, it became a quiet place, leaving only the Bloodwave Supreme fingertips hitting the handrails, and the sound of tuck-tuck-tuck was made. Bloodwave. If the prison dragon is really like the Shadow Guard said, it was the dragon who had been stripped of the Supreme Divine Realm, because of the failure to occupy the position in the dragon, then it will be a bit difficult. You also do know, dragon according to the rules of the Dragon Clan. The Dragon Clan can only be killed by the Dragon Clan. Otherwise the person created such a sin in the Taishu Temple, and the Emperor of the Taishu Temple could not just suppress him, but not kill him. Dead. Great Axe frowned and said. Bloodwave Supreme heard no expression on his face, and said indifferently, "What about the dragons? He has been expelled because he put down his taboos on the dragons. He has not belonged to the dragons long ago. Now he is just a funeral dog." After a long pause, Bloodwave Supreme continued. "Furthermore, the Shinkong Ancient Road incident was not planned by the dragons, and the owner had a debt and a debtor. What this one is looking for is not a dragon, but it is just a temple." After hearing the words and thinking for a long time, Supreme Master Axe passed a moment of determination in his eyes, and laughed heartily. "Well, this seat is for the sword unparalleled. Why not go crazy last time? What he said is difficult, not impossible. Hit him with a huge axe. Never a person who is afraid." Sun Shuebwa Supreme laughed. "And for years, he and this old friend have not fought side by side. I'm afraid this time, the two will fight again." "Okay. Then I'll go to the Taishu Temple now and discuss justice for Wushuang." Bloodwave Supreme laughed loudly, stood up, and left the Temple of Life. The giant axe's eyes narrowed, and a wave of killing began to condense, and he also stood up. Just as the two were about to step out of the Temple of Life, a disciple of the Temple of Life came quickly. "Two adults, please stay away. And Supreme Lord has something to let the younger bring them to two." Blood Supreme and Axe Supreme frowned, and heard that Supreme had to stop them? "What's the matter?" Bloodwave Supreme said lightly. The Life Shrine disciple quickly said. "Two adults," Supreme Gav said. You do and stop you from leaving the life shrine this time. But you do and just ask what you want to do. But you must not use the banner of life shrine. What you do is all your personal inclinations, and has nothing to do with the temple of life. Bloodwave Supreme and Giant Axe Supreme heard the words, and could not help but smile at each other. What does it mean? They naturally understand. It is good. The two nodded their heads. Blood Supreme seemed to remember again, and instructed. Yes, the thing about Jian Wushuang's death is still the same as before. He must not be revealed to his acolyte. News, do you understand? Yes. The disciple of the Shrine of Life shook his hands and replied. Bloodwave Supreme and Great Axe Supreme no longer hesitate. Looking up to the sky, under the body, has appeared thousands of miles away. The Temple of Life, the temple where the Supreme Lord is located. The Supreme Cover sat on a yin-yang futon cross-legged, surrounded by several exquisite incense burners, a smoky smoke of innocence, rising from the incense burner, spreading out into the mist. Little guy, there is only so much I can do for you. There was a rustling voice coming out of his mouth. The Bloodwave Supreme was expressionless. His clothes were stained with Supreme God blood, his hair was flying slightly, and countless disciples of the Taishu Temple were watching from afar, all shivering. The Supreme Axe is transformed into a giant and axe-bearing giant, like an ancient who opened up the world, a horrifying atmosphere that can shake 9 heavens and 10 places, crush the eternal world, and radiate from his body. The masters of the 4 halls suffered injuries and stayed outside the Taishu Temple. Their faces were ugly. Bloodwave, Giant Axe. In order to make a sword unparalleled, do you two want to start a war between Taishu Temple and Life Temple? A silver-haired boy strode from the Temple of Taishu with a pale complexion and cold eyes in his eyes enough to freeze the stars. It is Bingyu Supreme. Bingyu, when you sent a prisoner dragon to kill my temple disciple, sword unparalleled, did you ever think of waging war? Bloodwave Supreme saw Bingyu Supreme coming out. His face was not moved, and his indifferent hand was indifferent. Said. Bingyu Supreme heard a sneer, and replied, this seed is nothing but the way of treating its own. In the ruins of Tai Luo, Jian Wushuang can kill his disciples. Now this seat can naturally send someone to kill him. Is this the only sword in the world that kills this person? And the reason why this person cannot kill him? It is ridiculous. Bloodwave Supreme squinted his eyes, looked at him lightly and frowned. What's the matter? You, Bingyu Supreme replied with an instant anti-smiling smile. Blood, don't bully people too much. Bloodwave Supreme heard the words, and then faintly replied. This seat, I'm just lying to you today, what? Bingyu Supreme heard the words and immediately laughed. What a bully me. With a smile, he suddenly looked down at Bloodwave Extreme, his eyes cold to the extreme. Bloodwave, it seems that there is only one battle. The voice fell down. A shocking horror breath erupted, centered on Bingyu Supreme. This breath is so powerful that if he stretches out his hand, he can pinch the sky. And if he steps on it, he can break the universe. Extreme power, so scary. Okay, I heard that you are now the new emperor of the Taishu Temple. I just want to see how strong your new emperor is. Bloodwave Supreme said faintly. Come on then. Bingyu Supreme gave a cold drink, and when he stepped on his right foot, he suddenly disappeared outside the Taishu Shrine and swept towards a remote part of the universe. Bloodwave Supreme's expression was indifferent, and the same body flashed and chased towards Bingyu Supreme. Both are top of the universe. Once they fight, they will blast all the surrounding stars, so they must find a remote place in the universe. Morocco Supreme, Ice God of Emperor. After a pause, Jinnan Supreme looked at King Zhilong's face and said, but what I can't understand is that, as far as I know, you are lonely and indifferent by nature, and your relationship with Jian Wushuang is not very good. The two had a battle on the trial ground of the Life Shrine. The battle ended with your failure, and lost all faith in the Life Shrine. With your temperament, you will report if you say nothing. Will he make himself enemies for him? Jiao Jiawang heard the words and smiled slightly. You're right, Jian Wushuang. This guy really doesn't like him very much. He is also his biggest opponent ever. When Jinnan Supreme heard this, a doubt appeared on his face, and he said, then you still. Before he finished speaking, The king of Jiuzai turned to him and calmly said, "However, you idiots will not understand. How precious is a real opponent? Oh, do you love each other?" There was a flash of thought in the eyes of Jinnan Supreme, and then a cruel arc roused at the corner of his mouth, and he turned his head and said, "Okay, I already know what I want to know. King Nine Calamities, you can kill me 2 temple halls of Taishu Temple Lord, prepare to die now." Having said that, the crutch in the hands of Jinnan Supreme dropped slightly to the ground. Suddenly, a huge floor plan of the Xinghe River emerged from the place pointed by the extreme crutches of Jinnan. The figure of Jinnan Supreme disappeared slowly. In the sky, countless stars hang. The moon splashes the galaxy, and the sun rises, hanging on both sides of the sky. On the ground, countless mountains and mountains rise up, and the rivers and rivers flow endlessly, and are full of vitality. The entire wilderness and plains changed in an instant, creating a world of their own. King of the 9 Calamities, you are optimistic. This is the supreme divine art of this seat. Here, this seat is heaven. This seat wants you to die. You cannot live. This seat wants you to live. You must not die. The supreme words of Jinnan, at the same time, sounded like heaven and earth here. As if at this moment, Jinnan Supreme is the incarnation of heaven and earth in charge of the authority of heaven and earth. Is the art of heaven? King Jiujia raised his head and looked at the sky, then a sneer appeared on his face. Heaven, I can't help it. I'm the master of this. Boom. One thought. The kingdom of God. A killing has begun. When the king of 9 Calamities fell into battle, 3 days had passed in the battle between Supreme Bloodwave and Supreme Bingyu in Taishu Temple. No one knows the outcome of this battle. Everyone is waiting for Bingyu Supreme and Bloodwave Supreme. Who will win? One is the former owner of the first temple of the Taishu Shrine, the newly increased Taishu Emperor, and the other is the supreme chief of the Life Shrine, with ancient qualifications and special life. However, regardless of the outcome of the battle, everyone reached a consensus in their hearts. That is, disciples of Life Shrine should not be insulted. At this moment, a star field far away from the Taishu Temple, Bingyu Extreme stepped on the void, holding a Bingfeng Excalibur. His silver hair and silver eyebrows were stained with frost. Under his feet, countless icy cold spread out, but it turned out to freeze millions of miles of stars. Under the power of this cold, countless stars and the Milky Way were frozen, stopped rotating, and formed a very shocking picture. The Bloodwave Supreme was expressionless, standing against his hands, and a trace of red blood dripped down his body, freezing and melting his feet. Rin air southwest northwest wind, I stand still. Chapter 4284. Second more. Blood, what are you trying to do? Really want to fight with this seat? Bingyu Supreme looked dull and coldly spoke. They have been fighting for 3 days. If it comes to attacking power, he is better than the Bloodwave Supreme. Unfortunately, the Bloodwave Supreme is a special life, and the supreme divine power is much stronger than him. How he attacked his blood, he couldn't defeat him. Nowadays, the grand celebration of the universe is about to start, and he is very likely to become one of the children listening to the sermon in the adult seat. He is unwilling to fight with the Supreme Master of Blood. Bloodwave Supreme expressed an indifferent expression, and when Yen said, "What I don't want to do, what I want is nothing more than to recover a fare for the disciples of my life." Fare? Is it possible that you still want this seat, and apologize for that sword unparalleled? Bingyu Supreme seemed to have heard a joke, and Boundless rushed on his face. However, Bloodwave Supreme nodded his head and replied, "Yes, that's right." Bingyu Supreme heard the words. The smile on his face gradually converged, his eyes froze coldly and said coldly, "Blood, you are so naive. What is your identity? What is the identity of that sword Wushuang? Buy him, is it worth it?" From the beginning to the end, Bingyu Supreme never thought about it. He will fight against him because of the incomparable sword, regardless of the power situation of the two parties. After all, from his point of view, if he is not a supreme, he will eventually be an ant. A sword is unparalleled, and he will kill if he kills it, which will not affect the overall situation. Bloodwave Supreme shook his head indifferently. He is not worthy, it's not up to you. Also, Blood, don't blame this seat. since you are looking for death. Bingyan Supreme frowned, and could no longer restrain the anger in his heart. Tens of thousands of sharp ice dragons stood up, overwhelming, and screamed towards the Supreme. Countless voids shattered. Bloodwave Supreme saw his eyes narrowed, and a humming sound was heard in his mouth. Countless blood and water condensed at his fingertips, forming a wave of light, and slamming towards that forest ice dragon. Just when the two were about to fight again, two deep and ancient voices sounded in their minds. You guys, is that enough? Okay, blood, stop. When this sound sounded, the Bloodwave Supreme and Bingshuan Supreme flashed their eyes. Master God, Gov Supreme. Just because the sword died without a twin, a storm that swept the entire universe. Starry Sky Ancient Road, inside the 10th City Refining Tower. Jian Wushuang's breakthrough has also reached a critical point. The breath of countless rules of origin has become turbulent and violent. Just like the tide of the sea, wave by wave swept towards the sword unparalleled. The 9th rule gradually formed in his body. Swordless eyes are open, like a whale sucking water, constantly inhaling the original rules. At this moment, if someone is refining the 9th floor of the God Tower, they will find that in the chaotic 9th floor, there is a huge vortex centered on Jian Wushuang. At the center of the vortex, the sword sat cross-legged, a surge of divine power, absorbed by him as much as possible, and then formed the 9th rule in the body. With the formation of the 9th rule, Jian Wushuang's breath became more powerful and horrifying, and gradually moved to a completely new realm. In fact, there is indeed such a person who is quietly watching Jian Wushuang. I saw that outside of the refining God Tower, Lord Lan stood with his hand in his hands, and the exposed beautiful eyes were like crossing the refining God Tower. A picture of Jian Wushuang flashed through the depths of her pupils, and was immediately recorded. Her face flashed again and again, and she murmured, "This is a good seed." Years passed like a white horse, and in a blink of an eye passed. Outside the universe, although the battle between Bingyu Supreme and Bloodwave Supreme has ended, a gap has naturally formed between the Taishu Temple and the Temple of Life. People of the two major forces constantly collided. In the ancient sky, the same situation changes. The 9 giants no longer exist, and now in the ancient road of the starry sky, only the prisoner dragon is left to honor him. Most of the entire 8 cities are ultimately dominated, and most of them are already attached to the prisoner dragon. Only the Overlord, the 9-star prince, and the patriarch of the Moro Master team joined together to defend the prisoner dragon. But the situation was very bad. Like the dog of the bereaved family, the other giants of the prisoner dragon drove the west to the west. Struggling. Even when the 3 men joined forces, the situation became precarious. Overlord's 6 commanders die and vote, leaving only Shaoshang commander and Hanfeng commander, who are still alive. Even Emo Luo, the original Emo Luo Yinggu who had fought against Jian Wushuang, had already died in the Huba city, and died in the hands of the Emperor of the Sun Kingdom. Just when the 3 of them began to shake their despair, thinking about whether they should also take refuge in the prison dragon. No one knows, in the 10th city of the refining tower. Ultimately dominate, succeed. The sword Wushuang, wrapped in countless rules of origin, opened his eyes suddenly, and a fascinating world of gods flashed from his eyes. There was a crackling noise in his body, as if becoming a fairy. With the integration of the 9th rule, Jian Wushuang arrived in a perfect state. Regardless of the strength of the divine power, or the divine body, Jian Wushuang can feel that it has become unprecedentedly powerful. Compared to the 5th level domination, Jian Wushuang's strength has soared at least 100 times. At this moment, he was far from being able to compete in the 5th series. How strong is it now? Jian Wushuang spread his palms, looked down, and muttered to himself, "I don't know how strong I am now." Jian Wushuang took a deep breath, and did not rush to leave the 9th floor of the refining God Tower. But a flash of thought flashed in his eyes. Now, I have broken through to the ultimate realm. It is better to push here, and push the Yongyi sword art to Xiaocheng's realm, and I can try to master the Terra Excalibur, and to understand the second form of the Terra sword. When you think about it, Jian Wushuang flipped his right hand, and the ancient Taro sword code exuding the ancient flavor, suddenly appeared in front of him. Opening the second page of Tai Luo Jian Dian, the introduction of breaking dawn suddenly came to his mind. When night falls and the world is plunged into endless darkness and suffering, the first light that cuts through everything in the deepest darkness. Its name Dawn Light Dawn. Chapter 4285. The first is more. Break of dawn, cutting off all the evil spirits of the world and darkness, is the ultimate invincible killing trick. Jian Wushuang murmured to himself. A flash of enlightenment flashed in his eyes. Daybreak is considered a variant of Yongyi. If Yongyue is a sword in a country, it is a move that gathers the trapped and killed the enemy as a whole. Then breaking dawn is the strongest killing magical power that gathers all the divine power. If we only talk about pure attack power, the attack power of daybreak is far greater than Yongyi. Jian Wushuang took a deep breath, closed the Tai Luo sword code, and continued to develop the Yongye sword trick, trying to push Yongye to Xiaocheng. Years passed and 5,000 years passed again. Starry sky ancient roads are disturbing one after another, and in the latter 8 cities, the momentum of the prisoner's dragon has become as high as the sky, and no one dares to disobey his orders. Under the suppression of the prisoner dragon, Bawang and others have gradually no respite, so they have to retreat. The overlord, the 9-star prince, and the chief prince of Morwa had no choice but to split their heads, so as not to be caught by the captive dragon and wiped out. At the moment at the entrance to the 11th city, the overlord bleeds blood, panting heavily, staring at the big prince and Qiang demon, who came after him. At one time, all 3 of them were expensive as one of the 9 giants in the ancient sky. However, with the rise of the prisoner dragon, the great prince and the lord of the red sun took refuge, and his tyrant became a bereavement dog, and the 2 became the thugs of the prison dragon. The prince and the lord of the red sun had a faint smile on their faces, and they looked at the overlord who was at the end of the road with a smile, and said with a smile, "The overlord, the good bird chooses to live by wood. Now the prisoner dragon is very powerful. This seat looks at you once. Am kind. I would like to remind you that you should hurry up to the Lord His Majesty. This is your only clear way." The overlord's expression was indifferent, and the immortal overlord has been urged to the limit by him. But even so, his breath has slumped to the extreme. If not, the overlord is an extremely strong constitution rare in all ages. I'm afraid he can't hold on. Fell in the hands of 2 people. Well, my overlord has stood up to his feet all his life, never succumbed to others, and he is not qualified to submit to this prisoner. The overlord frowned and said proudly, even though his body was full of scars, his waist was still straight, like a long gun that didn't fall. He is a tyrant. He is undefeated in all his life. After suppressing the ancient city of Shinkong, how can he be willing to surrender to others? Stupid clinging. The prince shook his head, his eyes were cold and harsh, and he said, "Since this is the case, then you are ready to go on the road. Qiang Lord, do it." He dropped, flipped his right hand, and a dragon-patterned jade seal suddenly appeared on his hand, violently suppressed towards the overlord. Brahma Seal Town. This jade seal was overbearing to the extreme. The jade that was under the seal of the jade appeared, as if an overwhelming emperor appeared. He condemned the sky, lowered the wrath of thunder, and stormed the world. The Qiang demon also flashed his eyes, pulled his hands together, and a black ball condensed, braving the black magic fire, and pressing down towards the overlord. Both men were the most powerful invincible masters. When they shot, they were suddenly rock-shattered, and the powerful coercion directly cracked the earth. Seeing this, the overlord narrowed his eyes and flashed a dignified meaning. In terms of combat power, he thinks that he is no worse than either of them, even enough to kill either of them. But now his immortal overbearing body has been overwhelmed by long-term pursuit. I'm afraid I can't fight anymore. Ha! Finally, the big prince and the Qiang demon blasted a trick together, and hit the standing position of the overlord again, blasting the trembling of the 11th city. In the 11th city, countless ultimate masters hid in their temples, watching this scene tremblingly. What about people? The big prince raised a brow, and made a frivolous noise. I saw that where the Overlord was standing, there was no one, and the Overlord's figure disappeared. Big Prince, here is the link between the 10th city and the 11th city. It is estimated that the Overlord has fled to the 10th city. Jiang Demon said slowly. The eldest prince narrowed his eyes and sneered at the corners of his mouth, and said coldly, "Want to escape? Let's chase." Alas, the two stepped on foot, and disappeared at the entrance to the 11th city. Inside the entrance to the 10th city passage, puff, the Overlord opened his mouth and spit out a spit of blood, his face pale. Just a moment ago, he promptly urged the customs to clear the customs, only to escape the joint killing of the great prince and the Lord of the Red Sun in the near future. However, if this is the case, he is still scratched for a few minutes, and the scars on the indestructible tyrant have become more numerous. Well, if this seat recovers, I will smash these two people down, said the Overlord with a dark expression and hate. Among the 9 giants, he was at the forefront of his strength. He could not imagine that the 2 princes and the Lord of the Red Sun, who he dismissed at all, now persecuted him to the field by virtue of the power of prisoners. Can't go on like this, otherwise I'm afraid that there will be falling power today. The Overlord took a deep breath, his expression gradually calmed down. His eyes flashed a thoughtful color. He knew in his heart that now he wants there are only 2 options for survival. Or, it is to return to the prisoner dragon, like the prince and others, attached to the prisoner dragon. Either, it is to leave the ancient road of the starry sky completely. When the sky is high, the bird will fly, and the sea will be bounded by the fish, and the prince will not chase it out. The first option was directly rejected by the Overlord. If he wanted to surrender the prisoner dragon, he would have surrendered long ago, and he would not have reached today. If it was the second option, leaving the ancient sky, he would not be reconciled. Once he left the ancient road of the sky, it means that all his previous achievements were lost, and he will be completely deprived of his qualifications to participate in the grand event of the universe. No, I have a third option. When the Overlord was thinking, Yu Guang suddenly saw a pagoda with the shape of Lu in his corner of the eye, and his face was a joy. Right, you can escape to the Refining God Tower first. Chapter 4286. Second more. Refining God Tower inside the 9th floor. The countless flavors of the original rules, that had been strong and turbulent, have almost disappeared. There is only a sculpture of black hair in black, like an ancient existence, sitting quietly in the void, with a powerful breath, exhaling around him, sweeping in all directions, and chasing the entire chaotic space on the 9th floor. The squealing roar. In 5,000 years, the sword art of Yongyi has finally been deduced to Xiaoqing's realm. A low voice came from this black-haired black sculpture. The next moment, I saw the sculpture open my eyes suddenly. A shocking movement. The sharpness reached the extreme gods, flashed through the eyes of this sculpture. He is sword unparalleled. During the nearly 10,000 years in the refining tower, he not only broke Xiao into the ultimate realm, mastered the second form of Tailu sword code-breaking dawn, but also deduced the Yongyi sword to Xiaoqing realm. Now he is a world with a sword. When a sword falls, the night is coming. And this is far from his biggest promotion. Taro Excalibur. Jian Wushuang looked down, and saw in front of his knees a dark golden body, full of mysterious runes, and a sword like Taro's sword that was closed tightly at the position of the sword, quietly suspended. Immediately, he stretched out his palm, 5 knuckle fingers, and grasped the hilt of the Taro Excalibur. Suddenly, a sense of painstaking connection surged in Jian Wushuang's mind. Ha! And the vertical eyes of the position of the hilt of the Tai Luo Excalibur opened suddenly. A wicked breath came to the extreme, taken from this vertical eye. I saw this vertical eye covered with bloodshot blood like a cobweb, and a dark eyeball turned, filled with a sense of gloom. Although I can only use the real power of the Tai Luo divine sword, it is enough. The sword smiled slightly, and there was a touch of satisfaction in his eyes. The Taro sword. But the Taro Supreme was invincible in the universe, suppressing the peerless soldiers of 9 days and 10 places. From the rank of the grade, far beyond the level of the rule of treasure, reached a level that Jian Wushuang could not understand so far. Even if only a small amount of power can be used, it will surpass all the kendo magical powers of Jian Wushuang. Sword Wushuang's big hand turned over, inserted the Taro Excalibur into the sandalwood sword box behind him, slowly got up and stood up. Click and wipe. His body made a crackling sound like fried beans. Prison Dragon, don't let me down. A whisper of Morris whisper came from Jian Wushuang's mouth. Outside the pagoda, just when the Overlord arrived, and was about to step into the refining tower. Huh. Two light rays came through the world from a distance. He took the lead, and landed at the gate of Lianshan Pagoda. The light gradually dissipated. The great prince blocked his hand in front of the gate of the refining god, and the corners of his mouth aroused a touch of whisper, and Pai Sharo did not smile. Dignity I Overlord actually fell to the point where he needs to escape into the refining tower to save his life. The Overlord's face changed, and he turned to look behind him. I saw Qiyang Devil expressionless, holding a long black knife in his hand, blocking his way. Seeing this, the Overlord suddenly sinks a heart, and his face becomes ugly. In the 10th city, many ultimate masters looked at this scene, and couldn't help but sigh. Creation makes people heroes end. The dignified giant is so powerful that he has even been hunted down. It seems that this starry sky is an ancient road. We can't stay at all. Regarding the accidents in Hocheng, they naturally knew that the prison dragons were hunting down those who did not obey him. It really should be a sentence, he who lives with me is born, and those who are against him die. In the last 8 cities, except for those who are subject to the prison dragon, the other ultimate masters have basically been killed. Fortunately, their strength is low, and the prison dragons don't look down on it. However, no one came to trouble them. I don't know if they should be lucky or smile. Let's go and wait for the giants to fight each other. I'm afraid I will be caught in the pond. After sighing by these ultimate masters, they all rose to the sky and planned to leave. The great prince and others saw this scene, but they didn't care. A group of miscellaneous fish, they didn't bother to deal with it. Bawang, grab your hands. The prince turned his eyes and finally locked on the king. A majestic and magnificent momentum, soaring with him as the center, terrifying coercion directly collapsed the temple houses of 10 miles away. Behind the Overlord, the Lord of the Red Sun twisted his neck, spreading his coercion, as if an ancient demon had come into the world. Seeing this, the Overlord took a deep breath, knowing that he can no longer be good today. Fortunately, he was also a masculine man, and there was a flash of decisiveness in his eyes, and Shin said, "Come on. Okay, this seat satisfies you." The prince licked the corner of his mouth, and there was a morbid cruelty on his face. Just when he and the Lord of the Red Sun were about to make a move, ready to kill the Overlord, suddenly, rumble. As if the sky was falling apart, the entire 10th city, nearly 100,000 miles, shuddered. At this moment, countless grounds are cracking, the sky is constantly changing color, and a gust of wind is whistling. The entire 10th city is like falling into the sea of anger. An extremely powerful coercion came to the world, intimidating in all directions. In the face of this coercion, the coercion of the great prince and the demon of Qiyang is just like a mountain stream, facing the ocean, humble and extremely small, far from a level. With just one breath, it is crushed. What happened? The expressions of the great prince and the master of Qiyang have changed dramatically. Even the Overlord was trembling with expression. He was indestructible, and in the face of this coercion that destroyed the world, he felt like a chick and shivered. Only at the fortress where the 10th city Lord Master is located, she was closing her eyes and raising her eyes. Opened her eyes, a smile appeared on her face, and said softly, "He finally came out." Ha! At this moment, the bronze giant gate of the Alchemy Pagoda for nearly 10,000 years was closed and shattered. Countless raging sword-like spirits came out of it. Who is messing? The big prince and the Lord of the Red Sun roared, and quickly urged the divine power to resist this way like a dragon sword. Ha! However, this path was like a dragon sword and smashed at them, but it directly smashed them hundreds of feet away, leaving countless channels of sword marks on the ground. For a moment, the great prince and Qiyang demon were furious, and looked towards the Lianshan Tower. Da-da-da, da-da-da. A dreary footsteps passed from the refining tower. Immediately, they saw a cold young man dressed in black hair, and carrying a sword box, stepping out of the dark and deep inside the refining tower. He is. After the cold young man walked out of the dark place of the refining tower completely, the great prince and the Lord of the Red Sun were shaken with an unbelievable look on his face. Even the overlord was stunned, and the whole person was struck by lightning. Swords Warriors. Chapter 4287. The first is here. When Jian Wushuang walked out of the refining tower, the whole tent city became quiet. Not only is the prince, the master of Qiyang, the overlord etc. dumb, but even many of the ultimate masters who have planned to leave the ancient road of the starry sky, all of them are frightened, and they stare blankly at Jian Wushuang. Next moment, the great prince and others slammed a violent spirit. Staring at Jian Wushuang stubbornly, the great prince even shouted, "Impossible! You cannot be alive. I saw with your own eyes that you were shot dead by a captive dragon. How could you be alive? Who are you? Say, who are you?" Wu Jianshuang's expression was indifferent, and when he heard the words lightly looked at him, he calmly said, "Are you unhappy to see me alive?" The squeak of the prince's teeth biting. Speaking, there is still some connection between him and Jian Wushuang. In the ruins of Tai Luo that year, his third brother and third prince died in the hands of Jian Wushuang. The 23rd prince was killed. Although the big prince was happy in his heart, he made a distressed look outside, and even said that he would take off his sword unparalleled head in order to sacrifice the third prince in the spirit of heaven. Later, Jian Wushuang killed the quartet on the ancient road of the starry sky, and even slashed the 4 invincible masters, such as Jingwu Emperor and Rabbit Buddha. He knew in his heart that he was no longer the opponent of Jian Wushuang, and no longer wanted to take the words of the 3 princes' heads. This is the end of the matter. I can't help but. The prisoner dragon was killed at this time, and the sword unparalleled fell. In this regard, the great prince began to declare outside the sword that Jian Wushuang had good luck. Otherwise he would die in his hands. What he didn't expect is that Jian Wushuang not only did not die, but also looked at the momentum of the game just now. I'm afraid it is stronger than before. Jian Wushuang returns now. Once known by Jian Wushuang, he proclaims himself outside with all kinds of shouts. Sword unparalleled. You must be proud of it. Lord Prisoner Dragon can kill you once, you can kill you twice. The prince expressed a dark expression and clenched his fists. Qiyang Demon looked at Jian Wushuang with an interesting look. For this man who had begun to cut the 4 invincible masters for the first time, he met for the first time. Bloodsword, oh no, in fact, you should be called Jian Wushuang. In fact, this seat has always wanted to try how strong you are. Qiyang Demon stepped forward, looked at Jian Wushuang and smiled. Jian Wushuang narrowed his eyes when he heard the words. He remembered himself and did not say that he was called Jian Wushuang in the Shinkongulu. He had always used the pseudonym of Bloodsword. It seems that during the period of retreat, there should be a lot of things happening in the universe. Wu Jian's eyes flashed a thought. Then he looked at the Lord of the Red Sun and said lightly, "Do you want to fight with me?" "Yes," the Lord of Qiyang replied with a laugh. At the same time, there was a calculation in his heart. Now that Sword Warrior is dead and resurrected, it will surely stir up a stir in the universe. If you kill Sword Warrior by yourself, you will not only get the appreciation of the prison dragon, but you will be better reputation in the universe. Even if he lost to Jian Shou, he thought it was enough to escape by virtue of his strength. It would be a great achievement to sue the news to Prison Dragon. "I'll do what you want." Wu Jian Wushuang nodded his head, 5 knuckle fingers, holding the hilt of Wu weapon sword in his waist. Seeing this, the overlord suddenly changed his face and quickly shouted, "Sword unparalleled, don't be reckless. When this seat recovers 1 or 2, the 2 of us join forces." "Huh, I didn't wait for him to finish." Jian Sword Wushuang has drawn his sword. Wu cry Excalibur, 3 inches out of the sheath. "Ha!" he sang softly. The next moment, there was a flash of Jian Meng that made the world mourn. "Hurry up. Too fast." Everyone just saw Jian Wushuang's sword drawing action, and they saw a white swordman shoot out of his scabbard, just like a knife-cut tofu, flashed from the Lord of the Red Sun. I saw that the Qiyang demon had a smile on his face before he could spit out a word, but the whole person was instantly torn apart. Boom! The next moment, the main body of Qiyang demon collapsed. Sword spike. At this moment, the world seems to be choking. Everyone looked at Jian Wushuang in shock. His eyes were dull for a while, and his mouth could be opened to put an egg. Just now, what happened? 1. Omega Omega Omega. Kai 1Z. Si Qi Jian Wushuang's expression was faint, and her black hair was scattered, as if she had only done a trivial thing. She looked at the Grand Prince faintly and said calmly, "Are you going to fight me?" Huh? The eldest prince stared with eyes wide, and when he heard the question, a sudden horror like a ghost appeared on his face, but his feet softened, and he almost fell to the ground. A sword spike? The grandpa prince only felt a chill, rushed straight from the spine to the top of the head, and got cold all over the body. Jian's sword is unparalleled. How could he become so scary? Murmur. There was a rolling sound of throat, and it kept ringing. Everyone in the 10th city swallowed the saliva unconsciously. They looked at the expressions indifferently. The swords in black hair, and all their hairs were upright. Qiyang Demon Lord is the invincible master of the famous in the universe, one of the 9 giants in the ancient sky. So countless people look forward to the existence. But it was such an invincible master who was killed by Jian Wushuang's sword? This is not the most terrifying yet. The most terrifying thing is that the swords of the swordless pair of waists do not seem to be completely sheathed. What terrible combat power is this? At this moment countless people are trembling. Sword is unparalleled, you can't be proud. Even if you are strong, the adult dragon in the starry sky can rule you. The prince bite in the teeth. He is not a stupid person. Since Jian Wushuang can kill Qiyang demon with one sword, then his strength must be far above him. As for today's plan, only the prisoner dragon was moved out to make the sword unparalleled. Want to press me by the prison dragon? Wu Jianshou looked at him and said lightly, "Prince, I didn't want to kill you, but since you carried the prisoner dragon, so sorry, you can't go today." The prince heard the words, his face suddenly changed, and he quietly stepped back and opened his mouth and scolded, "Jian Wushuang, do you think you can compete with the prisoner dragon? I tell you the strength of the prisoner dragon, far from what you can." Ha! Speaking of this, the great prince saw that the distance between Wu Shuang and Jian has been widened, and he stepped his right foot, and suddenly shot towards the entrance of the 10th city channel. Escape! Must escape! I said you can't go. At this moment, a quiet voice sounded in his ear. When did you come here? How come so fast? The big prince numbed the scalp. Huh! The next second, a half-moon swordmang slashed across him. Under this half-moon jianmang, the body of the great prince was almost like a piece of paper, and was directly cut off. Do not! In the terrifying roar of the great prince, his body crashed and shattered. Qiyang Demon Lord and Grand Prince both died. Chapter 4288. Hey, the second is here. Purr. A gust of cold wind blew across the city's head. The 10th city, which was originally noisy, can be heard in a moment. Everyone is staring with eyes wide, staring at Jian Wushuang with a dull look. The 2 princes and the Lord of the Red Sun were killed by a single sword. Oh no! They didn't even see the swordless Wu Clan's Excalibur. Only one sword-drawing style annihilated the 2 gods. So horrible. Countless people sweated on their foreheads and looked at the footsteps in the void, like the sword Ling Shi, the unparalleled sword unparalleled, and a word surged in their hearts. It is like a monster descending from the sky. It is really too old on earth. Even the overlord, after a sluggish look, swallowed his throat and looked at Jian Wushuang's gaze, which was extremely complicated. Once, Jian Wushuang was the 7th leader under his hands, an unknown little in the ancient road of the starry sky. But now, the whole universe is making a storm for him. His own life was saved by him just now. Blood sword. The overlord shouted softly. He is more accustomed to calling the alias Blood Sword, rather than Sword Wushuang. Wu Jianshou narrowed his eyes, stepped down in the void, and said, Where is the prisoner dragon now? The tyrant stunned, and then replied, "Blood sword, he is in the 18th city." He wanted to say more, and saw that Jian Wushuang had turned around and walked towards the entrance of the 10th city passage. A quiet voice sounded, "Go kill me with me." The tyrant heard a sudden shock and quickly followed him. A moment later, the two disappeared at the entrance to the 10th city passage. At the same time, the 10th city around it was eventually dominated, and only then did it wake up like a dream. They look at each other. They can see the colorful in each other's eyes. They know that the ancient sky is going to change. Immediately, the news about the return of the sword without double life, the sword killed the prince and the master of the red sun with a sword, spread out at an extremely fast speed, sweeping the entire universe. In a short time, the whole universe was shaking. I was inside the temple of the virtual god. The Supreme sits on the hall, closing his eyes and raising his soul. The battle between him and Supreme Bloodwave, which contained nearly 100 Chaos-era Supreme Divine powers, was almost exhausted, and it took countless years to bring it back. Bloodwaves, wait until the Cosmopolitan Grand Event, this seat, and you to calculate this account. Bingyu Supreme opened his eyes. A pair of silver pupils flashed to the extreme of murder. I do not know how many years, ever since he asked the Supreme Divine Realm, no one dared to provoke him. However, on the day Shuebwa opened the killing ring in front of the Taishu Temple, and even said, "This seat, how about you?" the words did not leave him a little face. How does this keep him angry? It was time for him to rise to power as the new emperor. As a result, the entire universe is joking at him now, saying that he is the most abandoned emperor in the history of Taishu Temple. The killing intention of the Supreme Master in blood is almost condensed into substance. Suddenly, at this moment, there was a long beeping voice outside the door asking for a meeting. "Come in." Took a deep breath. Bingyu Supreme converged, said calmly, "Yes." Soon afterwards, he saw a master of the Taishu Temple, who hurried in from outside. "See Emperor Bingyu." The master half kneeled and arched his hand. Bingshuan nodded supremely and said lightly, "What do you mean by what?" The master half knelt on the ground, bowed his head, and hesitated for a while. "This? Say." Bing frowned, majestically scolded. When the disciple heard his words and bit his teeth, he had to scratch his head and replied, "Master Shinkong, the news from Shinkong Ancient Road. Jian Wushuang did not die. He has been reborn, and he killed the great prince and Qiang demon with one sword weight." After the words of this sentence fell, there was no thunder and anger in the whole hall, but it turned into a dead silence. It's chilling to death. The expression of this disciple could not help but panic. It was not until a long time ago that the quiet voice of Bingyu was remembered in the hall. "Okay, let me step down." The disciple heard the words, and then he was relieved in his heart, and quickly resigned. 1. Omega Omega Omega. Kai 1Z. See what he didn't know. The throne of Bingyu Supreme, which was created with the best materials, has been ripped apart. Waste. Extreme expression. Tai Ching reached the extreme. A cold breath emanated from him. The temperature of the entire hall plummeted by thousands of baidu, and the ground was covered with a thick layer of frost. Wu Jian Wushuang did not die. Then they are two virtual temples, and will become the biggest joke in the entire universe. At the same time, inside the Palace of Life, Bloodwave Supreme and Great Axe Supreme also received the news of the return of the sword without dual births. Ha 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 ha. I know that this little guy has always been so hard. How could he die in the hands of a bereavement dog? Since Jian Wushuang died, the blood on the face has never been a smile of supremacy, and at this moment he laughed heartily. The gigantic axe looked at the Supreme, who laughed heartily, and a smile appeared on his face. He is not good at words, but when he hears that Jian Wushuang has not died, the joy in his heart is not less than that of the Bloodwave Supreme. Blood, this time the temple of the virtual temple is too big. The Supreme Axe smiled and shook his head. Inside the extreme Shinkong Ancient Road, King Jiujia is rushing into shape, and is hunting down a big old man. "Aren't you going to kill me, to take revenge for your dean?" Wang Jijiawang's expression was indifferent, and he laughed calmly while chasing. "Pervert. Wicked. Mad." The old man's teeth clattered. His face was terrified. and he continued to shoot forward. For this person, he is the master of Jinnan Hall, who came to kill King Jiuzai. I just don't know when it will happen. Between the two hunted and killed, they changed their identities. The special life supreme from these temples of life, compared to me and other ordinary supreme, the advantage is too great. Especially the king of 9 calamities, is the perfect level of life. The thoughts of Su Jinnan Supreme turned sharply, and the madness began to figure out how to escape the hunt. However, just then, he was hunting down his king of the 9th calamity, and all of a sudden he stepped. Oh, Jian Wushuang is not dead? Wang Jiujiao Wang took his hand. A look of surprise appeared on his face. Just now, he received a supreme news, and was told that Jian Wushuang not only died, but also killed the 2 princes and Qiang demon with 1 sword. So too, how could he die if he was the opponent of King Jiuzai? King Jiujiao shook his head and smiled, looking at the owner of the South Hall of the Jinnan, and said lightly, "Just this seat spares your life today." And at the same time, Wu Jianshuang and Overlord have stepped into the 11th city. Blood sword. Jian Wushuang, listen to me. If I expected it well, Prison Dragon should already know that you are not dead. Now the whole 8 cities are his people. If you rush and if he does, he will set up an ambush and send someone to siege you. In my opinion, it would be better for me to find the Jiuxing Shengzi and Maluo Shao, and then think about the countermeasures together. Otherwise, if you enter the latter 8 cities like this, you will be the enemy of the world. The tyrant followed behind Jianshuang, and was slightly behind by half a figure, considering the words carefully. The current sword is unparalleled, and naturally cannot be treated in the same way as before. Even if he talks, he has to think about whether it is appropriate or not. Are all enemies in the world? Jian Jianwushuang narrowed his eyes upon hearing the words, then shook his head and calmly said, "Then, let us be the enemy of the world." Chapter 4289. The first is here. The deepest ancient road in the sky, the 18th city. The prisoner dragon was sitting on a throne, and the great emperor, the young emperor, the blood son, and a charming woman stood beside him. He had a newsletter in his hand, the master of the 10th city, and the report of the battle rushed. In this newsletter, there is a detailed record of the return of Jian Wushuang's dual life, and Jian Wushuang's first sword killing the 2 princes and Qiang demon. "Master, what shall we do now?" asked the Emperor Shao of the great sun god. The prisoner's expression was playful, and he didn't answer but smiled. "It's really interesting. The sword Wushuang is clearly under this seat, he has disappeared, and it all made him come alive." He froze. The prisoner's eyes glanced over the faces of the young emperor of the great kingdom of the sun and the enchanting woman, and said, "Xiao Yan Tian Luo Fu, you 2 each led 100 ultimate masters to the 11th city." Yes, the concubine of the Emperor Dari's god kingdom should be complimented, and Tian Luofu kissed the prisoner's face and smiled. "Master prisoner, wait for my good news." A moment later, each of them led 100 ultimate masters, rushing towards the 11th city. Prison Dragon watched the 2 disappearing into the sky, and chuckled. "Sword unparalleled, don't worry, the game between us has just begun." 11th city. The sky is gray. Wu Jianwushuang stepped on the imperial road of the 11th city. He could feel that the past 10,000 years had passed, and the Xingkong ancient road had become a lot more deserted than when he was there before. He remembered that when he first stepped into the 11th city, there were still many ultimate masters, who stood at the entrance of the passage, and invited the ultimate masters of the 8 cities to join the major forces. But now, the excitement and prosperity of the past disappeared, leaving nothing but cold. "Jian Wushuang, since you faked death, the whole city behind the ancient starry sky has fallen into the mad killing of the prisoner dragon. Now the whole city behind the ancient starry sky, the dead and flee, even if there are a few still alive, yeah. Almost all took refuge in the prison dragon. Overlord lags behind Jian Wushuang and sighs. Imagine that when the 9 giants jointly led the ancient road of Xingkong, they can be said to be full of flowers, each showing its different colors. Even if there are occasional killings, it will not hurt the foundation." Wu Jianwushuang nodded, no reply. The King of Kings continued to take care of himself. I have already sent a message to the Jiuxing's son and the demon chief, and they will come to us later, when we will kill the prisoners together. Qi Jian Wushuang said a while, then thought and asked, "Can the leader of Shake Mountain survive?" He did not care about the lives and deaths of other people, but shook the mountain leader. When he first came to the 8 cities behind Shinkong Ancient Road, he treated him rather modestly. The overlord heard a bitter smile and replied with a bitter smile. Shake the Mountain is still alive. That is, the other people are in command, and they have all died. But unfortunately, I waited for the captive dragon to chase after myself. I don't know where. Just as the two started talking, flying above the sky, a sudden roar was made. Wu Jianshou looked up. I saw a demon man wearing a royal robe with a round of fierce daylight embroidered on it, and a charming woman with an exposed and enchanting body, each leading 100 ultimate masters, like a rolling black cloud from the distance, came out of the air. 1. Omega Omega Omega. Kai 1Z. See, they are so powerful that they are full of pressure, as if the sky is about to reach the sky. It is the Tianluo woman of the great emperor kingdom and the young spider family. Seeing the overlord, the pupil shrinks. He did not expect that the prison dragon would be so fast. Soon after they arrived in the 11th city, they had been sent to kill. I saw above the sky, the emperor of the great sun kingdom. The emperor Shao looked indifferent, and looked down at Jian Wushuang. His eyes flashed coldly. In the original ruins of Tailuo, the king of Jinnan died in swordless hands. The king of Jinnan was his henchman's assistant to the ruins of Tailuo. Just take advantage of today, to end the sword unparalleled. Xiao Di hummed in his heart. On that day, Luo Fu looked at Jian Wushuang directly. After tapping her mouth, she covered her mouth and smiled softly. Well, you are Jian Wushuang? You are younger and more handsome than I expected. Why not do me 1,001 of the first faces? Maybe I can say, Lord Prisoner Dragon, spare your life. After I finished speaking, she laughed and trembled. I have to say that Luo Luofu's beautiful appearance this day, under such a smile, is really full of charm. Even many of the ultimate masters behind her have been blinded for a while. The king of tyrants quickly said next to Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang, you must not listen to this demon woman's nonsense. Their spiders are the best bewitching technique. Once they are confused, they will swallow their divine spirit and nourish themselves. On that day, the Luo woman heard the words, and a moment of anger suddenly appeared on her face. Lu Mei yelled upside down and said, Bawang, you're going to hurt and stigmatize me here. After saying that, she turned to look at Jian Wushuang again, and smiled charmingly. Sword Wushuang, can you think clearly? Wu Jian had no expression on both sides, and slowly looked up at her calmly. Are you done? Tian Luofu froze on her face. When you are finished, prepare to die. Wu Jian's eyebrows were cold. His right hand slaps Wu weapon sword. Wu weapon sword comes out of the sheath instantly. A shocking movement, straight into Jiuxiao, issued a dim cold sword, spread instantly. This sword is blowing like a hurricane, endless power is flowing. The entire mile of emptiness was instantly condensed. Sword warriors come back quickly. This super battle array is invincible. Bawang shouted. However, wait for him to finish. Qi Jian Wushuang has already held the hilt of his sword and stepped hard. The whole man has risen to the sky, merged with the sword, turned into a half-moon sword on, and looted towards the ultimate master of the sea. At first, this sword was just ordinary, but as it approached, it suddenly became like a heaven and earth, exuding endless brilliance. Shi Xiaodi and Tian Luofu looked indifferent and drank lowly. Go all out and kill him. Yes. 200 ultimate dominators suddenly should be. Various rules emerged from the treasure, stirring thousands of magical rays in the air. Once upon a time, they were the top 9 giants, and Jian Wushuang was just an unknown little in the ancient road of Shinkong. Now they face Jian Wushuang, but they can only look up. We sent him far away. Jiuxing Xingzi sighed. After a short while above the sky, there was only Sword Wushuang. He stood with the sword, his black hair was flying, and his black robe was stained with blood, as if he had stepped on the sky. "You are waiting for me." Wu Jianshou looked back at them, then turned into sword on again, and swept away towards the entrance of the 11th city. "Sword unparalleled, where are you going?" Bawang and others shouted, shouting, "Slay the dragon." Wu Jinshuang spit out 2 words calmly. Boom! A gigantic Jinmong appeared, and in an instant, it disappeared in front of them and appeared thousands of miles away. In the next breath, Jian Wushuang has disappeared to the 11th city. Gong Bawang and others looked at each other quickly and quickly followed. 11th city, 12th city, 13th city, 14th city. The sword of Wushuang, which stretches for thousands of miles, starts from the 11th city and passes through the sky of each city successively. He saw Hebaking, and it has become so crowded, countless mountain peaks are broken, and countless large lakes have dried up. He knows that these are the masterpieces of Prison Dragon. In the 8 cities that followed, the ultimate masters who stretched out and lingered under the prisoner's dragons all looked up and looked at the dazzling swordsman passing by from the air. It's swordless. He is back. In the 16th city, a burly figure hiding in the depths of the ground, feeling the strong kendo breath passing fast in the sky, he felt a shock and broke through the soil. He is the leader of Shaking Mountain. He knows that the day he is waiting so hard has finally arrived. At this moment in the 18th city, it is also the last city in the ancient sky. The prisoner dragon sat on a throne of dragon patterns, as if sensing something, slowly raised his head to look at the sky, and a weird arc evoked in the corner of his mouth. "Don't you stop it?" He twisted his neck lazily, making a clicking noise. "Blood God's son, Jian Wushuang is coming, bring his old friend out." The Blood Shenzi stared and nodded. He stomped into the temple behind Prison Dragon, and launched a huge thing shrouded in a black robe. Wow! The black robe was lifted by the Blood Sun, and I saw a huge stone frame made of black iron. A chubby ultimate dominated by 2 black chains that penetrated the scapula and nailed to the stone frame. "This ultimate master is awesome. Little guy, your rescuer is coming." Chapter 4291. The first is here. This sword is coming in galvanically. It was not noticeable at first, but as it approached, it instantly covered the sky and shattered the clouds. Suddenly, the Blood Sun's face suddenly froze. Even though it was still thousands of miles away, he could already feel the sharp sword chi, which hurt his body. "It's strong." The word of God of blood poured out from the bottom of his heart. "Finally come." The prisoner's eyes flashed wildly, with a touch of excitement on his face, and he stood up from the throne. "Ha!" The sword on transformed by Wu Jianwushuang, without any intention of staying, ran straight towards the prison dragon. "Ha ha ha, good job." The prisoner's feet slammed into the void, and 2 large pits exploded, turning into a black on, and slamming into the sword. "Ha!" There was a loud noise and it broke out. I saw the 2 hit the center. A huge arc-shaped shock wave spread instantly, and set off a huge white wave in the air. The next moment, I saw the figure of the prisoner dragon, shot it backwards, hit it on a mountain peak, and crashed the mountain directly. Wu Jianmong gradually dispersed, and in the void, a thin figure of black hair was exposed. "Hit him." It is the sword unparalleled that has passed the 18 cities. This sword has accumulated endless divine power of the sword, and keeps backlogging until it hits the prison dragon, and then only bursts out. Since you've broken through to the end." The prisoner dragon came out of the mountain peak, wiped the blood flowing from the corner of his mouth, looked up at Jian Wushuang. His face was not half afraid, but the sparks of excitement in his eyes kept flashing. "Yes, it's my blessing and I broke it." Jian Wushuang nodded faintly. The prisoner dragon smiled. And then he said, "Yeah. The only way is that it will be interesting to kill you again." Jian Wushuang didn't care about him, but turned to look at the Hao Ember Master on one side, and there was a pity in his eyes. The current Hao Ember dominates. 2 chains pass through his scapula. His face is yellow. His whole body is weak to the extreme. His eyes are full of decay. But when he saw Jian Wushuang, there was a gleam of light in his bleak and hopeless eyes. He looked at Jian Wushuang, opened his mouth hard, and forcibly squeezed a smile. Master Blood and Blood Sword, I knew that you would come to save me. Prison Dragon watched this scene, sneered and urged narrowly, Jian Wushuang, speaking of this guy who is really loyal to you. This place has crushed his bones time and time again. He burned his soul with the divine fire every day, causing his body to constantly collapse and reorganize. Even so, he still did not want to trust me. Wu Jianshou heard the words. His expression gradually became cold, turned his head to look at him, calmly said, Relax, I will crush your bones inch by inch, cramps and bones, torture day and night. Ha ha ha, Jian Wushuang. Then it depends on whether you have this ability. Prison Dragon Zhang laughed wildly. Countless black chains erupted behind him and smashed into the sword like a missile. Jian Wushuang's eyes closed for a moment. He was quite impressed with the black chain. Each of these black chains was as heavy as the Mount Taishan, and extremely heavy. In the face of this move, Jian Wushuang was helpless and could only be passively beaten. But now, naturally, they can no longer be compared. Looking at the thousands of chains smashed by the sky, Jian Wushuang spit out 2 words. Cut star. Ha! A silver sword rainbow condensed, as if there were thousands of glory in the world, gathered in the hands of a sword unparalleled, carrying the potential of armies to make things easier, and severely chopped the thousands of chains. As Jian Wushuang broke through to the ultimate level, the sword-cutting sword also had a worldwide difference. I saw countless star formations on this sword-cutting sword. The silver sword rainbow is more like a magnificent galaxy. When it is dropped with a sword, it is like ingesting a rolling galaxy. The power is terrifying. Ding! There was a crisp sound of crackling, and this black chain, which was very strong, was broken down at a very fast speed under the Star River, turned into a silver sword. This hasn't stopped yet. After Silver Jianhong cut off all the black chains, he chopped forward again. In the surprised eyes of the prisoner dragon, a sword struck him. Ha! The prisoner's dragon slammed fiercely, and the sword suddenly burst into a sword mark, spilling a series of black blood. Jian Wu's eyes narrowed, and his right foot slammed on the ground. It suddenly swept like a hurricane, followed by a leap, and immediately appeared on top of the prisoner's dragon head. Before the prisoner dragon's reaction came, his 5 fingers suddenly extended and clasped on his face, grabbing the prisoner's face, slamming it on the ground. Prisoner Yuet. Ha! Countless lands are split. Jian Wushuang's expression is indifferent, grabbing the prisoner's dragon's face, banging on the ground constantly. The action is violent to the extreme. Ha! Tap it again and again. A horrible sword, constantly blasting in the sword without hands. The prisoner's head was grasped by Jian Wushuang, and he smashed on the ground of the 18th city, smashing the ground into a huge deep pit, and numerous cracks spread out around the giant pit. Sword unparalleled, who gives you the qualification, dare to hurt me? A low, deep voice issued from the prisoner's mouth. Taking advantage of a gap, Prison Dragon reached out his hand and pushed hard towards Jian Wushuang. Suddenly, a strong thrust rushed toward Jian Wushuang, as if heaven and earth were repelling him, pushing Jian Wushuang away fiercely. The next moment, Prison Dragon supported the ground with both hands and pulled his head out of the deep pit. I saw him at this moment. He was miserable. The whole face was covered with blood. The sword intention of Jian Shuang continued to explode between 5 fingers, covering his entire face with sword marks. Oh! Prison Dragon gasped heavily, but there was no fear on his face. Instead, he stuck out his tongue and licked the blood at the corner of his mouth, smirking lowly. Is this the feeling of injury? It's really getting me excited. Ha! He didn't wait for him to finish. He had already stepped on his right foot and shot like a cannonball. His right hand condensed into a fist and smashed again towards the sword unparalleled. On his arm, the dark dragon scales began to cover. The whole void air is distorted by this punch. Jian Wushuang's expression was cold, and his right hand made a stroke on Wu Cry Excalibur, and he also raised his sword to kill the prisoner dragon. The speed of the two was extremely fast, and they fought against each other in an instant, hitting the ground for 9 days, and hitting the ground for 9 days. Every time the two of them fought, the void was constantly shaking. The entire 18 cities were like being plagued by apocalyptic disasters. The area was 1,000,000 miles away. Is this still the battle between the ultimate masters? The blood god looked at this scene, and there was a horror flash on his face. Just standing on the edge of Jian Wushuang's battle with the prisoner dragon, he could feel the violent coercion from the two, and he stepped back. Chapter 4292. The second is here. Jiang Wushuang, go and die, go and die. Prisoner Long grinned, sparks of excitement flashing in his eyes. The corners of his mouth suddenly cracked. 2 rows of cold teeth were exposed, and he bit in a blast at Jian Wushuang. Boom! At this moment, the prison dragon seemed to turn into a black dragon, exuding endless dragon power. A stinky wind came out from the prisoner's mouth. The sword-ons flickered in Jian Wu's eyes, and he split a few open sky swordsman's hands, splitting the giant mouth that the prisoner pressed down. The prisoner yelled, his white pupils twisted, and then he laughed loudly. Sword Wushuang, is this your strength after the breakthrough? I don't think so. He stretched out his palm far away, bending his 5 fingers slightly, as if holding Sword Wushuo in his palm. Absolute gravity. With these words falling, like this side of the world, all fell into the hands of the prisoner dragon, turning into an exclusive control of the kingdom. Rumble! The prisoner's 5 fingers clenched slowly, and at once, countless mountains and lakes were moved and squeezed towards the sword unparalleled. Wu Jian saw this. His pupils could not help shrinking slightly. 10,000 years ago, he died on the technique of prisoner dragon. This time, this technique reappears. Compared with the last time when the sword was unparalleled, the squeezing gravity is much stronger. As if the whole world is directed at Jian Wushuang, the force of the violent world wants to squeeze Jian Wushuang into a meat sauce. Is it similar to the heavenly art of thinking about the kingdom of God? Jian Wushuang's thoughts flashed wildly. He could feel that all the surrounding void had been transformed into the realm of the prisoner dragon. Under this squeezing gravity, he felt that both legs were poured like molten iron, and became extremely heavy, and even moving one step seemed extremely difficult. Ha ha ha, sword unparalleled. This is the realm of the realm that I realized when I was still in the supreme divine realm. Feel it. The prisoner dragon laughed wildly. His eyes sparked with excitement. Huh. At this moment, a few light beams swept from a distance. Xianguang fell, transforming into a figure of Overlord, Jiuxing Shengzi and other figures. The leader of Shaoshan is also mixed in it. Not good. The situation of Jian Wushuang is not good. I will help him quickly. When the Overlord's face changed, even if he wanted to do something, he would help Jian Wushuang. It is rumored that this prisoner dragon was the supreme divine realm. Due to the failure to compete for the crown prince of the dragon tribe, he was deprived of the supreme divine realm, fell into the ultimate dominion, and was expelled by the dragon exile. Although Sword Wushuang is strong, but faces a supreme, after all it's a little worse. Jiuxing Shengzi and Emo Luohuang Emo looked at each other. Their faces were equally dignified. I was just when the 3 of them planned to make a joint shot, and blocked the prisoner dragon 1 or 2 for the sword unparalleled. The leader of Shaoshan was looking at Jian Wushuang, and she said in a deep voice, Master Overlord, Lord's son, Master of the clan, please believe in Jian Wushuang. This is his own battle. I think he should not want others to intervene. But the Overlord frowned, and wanted to say more. I saw the leader of Shaoshan smile with a smile and said, Master Overlord, believe in sword unparalleled, I know him. He is a man who can create miracles. After hearing the words, the Overlord was ready to step out and slowly closed it back. Shake the mountain, you're right. This is his battle. Facing Wanjin's gravity, Jian Wushuang took a deep breath, and had to say that Prison Dragon was the most powerful among the ultimate masters he had ever seen. Even if it was the king of 9 calamities, when he was in the ultimate mastery, his sense of oppression is not comparable to the current Prison Dragon. Of course, this is also the reason why Zhou Jiawang never really shot at him. If Jian Wushuang has not yet broken through the ultimate realm, maybe it has really fallen today, but the current sword Wushuang is invincible in the ultimate dominated realm. God body now. Jian Wushuang spit out 3 words. Suddenly, Jian Wushuang's deities began to skyrocket. A round of xianhui surrounded him, countless nebulae rising from the soles of his feet, and a force from the deepest part of his soul burst out. For 1 mile, 2 li, 3 li, 50,000 miles, 60,000 miles, 70,000 miles. In a blink of an eye, Jian Wushuang turned into a chaotic giant standing 70,000 miles tall, with the sky above his head, and a foot on the ground, looking at the sun like a projectile and the galaxy like a bathtub. It seems that as soon as he raises his hand, he can break the universe and step on his feet to teach Shinzhou Shun. However, this is not the end. His body is still skyrocketing. 80,000 miles. 90,000 miles. It was only when the sword's deity's body soared to 98,000 miles that it stopped slowly growing. At this moment, the sword is unparalleled, and the cheeks are covered by the endless fairy nebula. It is unrealistic, like a demon in chaos, and like an ancient fairy king. In one breath, a thunderous thunder and a space storm are raised. Under the body of the sword warrior's 98,000 miles, the weight was almost insignificant, just like a string. Trying to bind the mammoth giant, it would not have any effect. The next moment Jian Wushuang calmly said, Yongyi, howl. The Wu weeping Excalibur instantly disappeared and became invisible, turned into countless thick black mist, and rushed towards the prison dragon. Time and space seemed to stagnate at this rate. What is this? The prisoner whispered a low voice. He was not surprised at the sword-like 98,000 miles body. As one of the strongest races in the universe, the dragon race's former successor candidate has a wealth of knowledge and naturally knows special creatures can open the body. I was just confused by the tide and black mist that kept coming to him. This black mist was clearly visible but could not be touched. But no matter how he blasted out the magical power, he wanted to break the constant black mist. But the magical power that was enough to destroy the sky and the earth was straight from these dark powers. The fog passed through. Next moment, these black mists came straight to him, weaved together to form a dark ball, which wrapped him in it. The world in front of him changed dramatically in the blink of an eye. Wu Jianwushuang disappeared. The 18th city disappeared, and what he could sense and see could be the deepest eternal darkness. A deprived force slowly crawled towards him, as if in the dark, with both hands, began to deprive him of everything that belonged to him. His cultivation, his strength, his longevity, and even the blood of his dragon. Under this deprived power, his breath gradually began to languish. At this moment, even the outside world can feel that the breath of life belonging to the prison dragon is gradually weakening. Is prison dragon finally dead? He smiled on the faces of everyone, congratulating them. Jian Wushuang, who stands above 9 days, and is shrouded in countless fairy hui nebulae, makes people's faces invisible, but expressionless. He could feel that a horror that was enough to make the world tremble in 9 days and 10, and the surrender of all the nations, was rising in the kingdom of the night. Starting. 1. Omega Omega Omega. Kai 1Z. See, that is the dragon, the purest breath. Take a dragon and start to really wake up. Chapter 4293. The first is here. Tear it. I saw a sound like glass shattering inside the black ball. On the surface of the black ball, a crack gradually opened. A breath of terror that could not be described in any words gradually rose up. What happened? This breath. This is the breath of the dragons. Long Wei. This is the dragon clan, the most pure Long Wei. Yi Bawang, Jiuxing Shengzi, and others, before the smile on their faces had faded, they suddenly solidified on their faces, and they were all replaced by shock. Ha! Finally, after a loud bang, sword unparalleled eternal kingdom, shattered. I am so black and long, like a giant mountain, like a dragon, soaring into the sky. The dragon's body was covered with palm-sized scales. The scales exudes a dark luster. There are dark clouds entangled between the 5 claws, and the 2 dragon horns are branched off, like a piercing sky. Sword curved sharp. Ha! Wu weeping sword flew backwards, was held in the hand by the sword, and the sword trembled for a while. The sword was expressionless and expressionless, looking up at the dark dragon. The 9 dragons, one of the strongest races in the universe, was born to be the rule's realm. Faced with people of other races, it has inherent blood suppression. Jian Wushuang, you are the first person to force this seat to use the body. You should be proud. Prison Dragon's eyes were indifferent, slightly twisting the huge body in the clouds. Looking at Jian Wushuang said coldly. After finishing speaking, the 5 dragon claws of the prisoner stepped in the void and immediately slammed into the sword unparalleled. After this collision, the speed was extremely fast, and the void was directly drawn out a horrible burst of sound. Wu Jianshou twisted his neck and stretched out the big hand covering the sky. 5 fingers like the mountains condensed into a fist, and also smashed towards the prison dragon. The prisoner dragon and sword are unparalleled. One is 10,000 feet long, the other is as high as 98,000 miles. And under a collision, the entire 18th city suddenly seems to be caught in a doomsday madness and shakes frantically. Countless palaces and halls collapsed, and countless grounds opened up. In this place, the entire 18th city seemed to become a chaos, with violent divine power and coercion spreading unbridled, destroying the site wherever it went. Too strong. Is this still the battle between the ultimate masters? Also the ultimate master. But I waited in such a fight, even without qualification to intervene. Puppet King, Jiuxing Xingzi, and others all looked up at this scene and were astonished. Even the Blood Sun is stunned, his throat rolling for a while. As the former 9 giants, the top arrogant in the universe, they stood at the pinnacle of dominating this realm. But at this moment, they were all horrified. Jian Wushuang and Prison Dragon fought far more than they understood. Category, compared to the 4 words of Supreme, emerged in their minds. Whether it is Jian Wushuang or Prison Dragon, although it is the ultimate dominating realm, it has absolute strength comparable to the Supreme. One is a dragon family who fell from the supreme state of God, and the other is a special life with a perfect level of chaotic creatures. Such a battle is rare in the world. The 2 men, Jian Wushuang and Prison Dragon, continued to collide over 9 days. Each collision was a blast of air. If the 2 were not in the ancient sky, they were fighting like this in the universe, afraid of 1 star. Domain will be blown. Sword unparalleled, you will die today. The prisoner yelled. The 5 claws were like 5 sharp swords, directly penetrating the sky and grabbing at the sword unparalleled. Suddenly, Jian Wu's eyes flashed with murder. He knew that only one of them could survive today. Prisoner, it's you who is going to die today. Yen Jian Wushou grabbed his backhand and directly grasped Baishan. A rolling mountain range was lifted between the 5 fingers, containing the surging divine power, and smashed into the prisoner's head severely. Under the battle between the 2, they are a few steps back. Every step they took, the 18th city trembled like an earthquake. The buildings in the 18th city have all disappeared. Millions of miles across are ruins. Talented power long way. The prisoner dragon opened his mouth and snarled. And suddenly, a mighty coercion came from the depths of the bloodline. And came suddenly. The 9 dragons, also known as the heads of thousands of nations, face innate repression against other universes. Under this coercion, even the distant overlord, Jiuxing Xingzi and others felt that they wanted to bow down and bow their heads towards the prisoner dragon. Is this the power of the dragon race? Overlord and others narrowed their pupils. Wu Jianshou snorted coldly and said the same. The talent is amazing, the life is shocking. A force from the deepest part of the soul suddenly centered on Jian Wushuang, spreading around. This is also the power of coercion. Under this coercion, time and space seem to freeze up. The next moment, the coercion of the prisoner's dragon family and the sword courage of the perfect layer of chaotic creatures from Jian Wushuang suddenly collided together. Although these 2 coercive pressures are invisible, at this time they seem to have condensed into substance, turning into 2 opposing gas fields, constantly squeezing and colliding. In the void, there was an unpleasant friction sound. Immediately, everyone saw that the coercion of the dragon family, which belongs to the prisoner dragon, turned out to be repressive step by step. How strong is the pressure of the dragon family? How can it hold the perfect chaotic creature? Under the shock of Jian Wushuang's life, Prison Dragon felt for the first time that the blood in his body felt a sense of submission. That is from the higher life, overlooking the lower life. "I prisoner dragon, I said you died today," Jian Wushuang said indifferently. The voice fell, the sword stepped without a step, and two big hands grabbed at the same time, directly grasping the dragon tail of the prisoner dragon, in a most primitive and brutal, but also the most domineering gesture, smash crazy. The thousands of long prisoners of dragons were caught in the hands of the sword unparalleled, and the competition was like a loach, without any resistance. With the roar of the prisoner dragon, a golden dragon's blood spilled from the air. Everyone watching this scene couldn't help but stunned. Sword warriors. A deafening roar made by the prisoner dragon was actually a wild quake, and he broke free from the sword without hands. Immediately, his 5 claws stepped from the ground, pulling away from Jian Wushuang, staring deadly at Jian Wushuang. A pair of huge eyes, no other emotions, all turned into madness and violence. "Mystery, pillar of fire dragon, breath of destruction," the prisoner yelled, and opened his mouth to spit out the burning syrup. This syrup is terrifying to the extreme. Just a dripping spark, it directly burns a bottomless pit in the ground. Chapter 4294. Second More. At the same time. In the 10th city, Lord Lan is located. The blue adult in blue, with a blue veil on his face, was carrying his hand, his beautiful eyes narrowed, and he looked toward the sky far away. As if, her gaze directly penetrated the entire ancient road of the starry sky, and saw the two men who were fighting in Jian Wushuang and Prison Dragon. Interesting. There was a smile on Master Lan's face covered by the veil, and he said to himself, "Master, this time, I can find you 2 good seedlings." After speaking, there was a touch of groaning in Lord Lan's eyes, a wave of his right hand, and a black light mirror appeared in her hand. The black mirror rose in the wind and shot straight towards the 18th city. In such a war, all the nations of the universe should observe it together. A faint utterance came from her mouth. Next moment, in the depths of the universe, no matter whether it is the Taishi Temple, the Great Sun God Kingdom, the Great Feng Kingdom, or the Life Temple, all the high-altitude forces appear in the sky. In the picture, there is a giant like a chaos demon, and a dragon covering the sun and the sky. They are constantly fighting, the sky is falling apart, and the sun and the moon are shattering. These 2 people are impressively swordsman and prisoner. Taishi Temple. The Emperor Bingyu was sitting on the throne. Suddenly he seemed to sense something. He stepped down and appeared in the middle of the Taishi Temple instantly. I saw there was a twist in the void, and then a battle picture appeared. Sword unparalleled? Bingyu Temple shook his eyes, and there was a coldness in his eyes. Did you actually use the body of the prison dragon? It's no wonder that the Temple of Life valued him so much, even at the expense of my 2 virtual temple. If this son does not die, he will suffer later. Inside the Temple of Life, Supreme Bloodwave and Supreme Axe, including the Supreme, also invariably raised their heads and looked into the void. The pictures about the battle between the prisoner dragon and Sword Unparalleled also passed to the Temple of Life. Bloodwave Supreme looked at Jian Wushuang, who was suppressing the prisoner dragon with a smile on his face. "Big Axe, this little guy has become a lot stronger." He smiled sideways at the great axe. The Supreme Axe looked up at this scene, and when he heard the words, he nodded softly and laughed heartily. "Blood, I see the current Sword Unparalleled, which is stronger than the 9 kings who originally dominated the realm. A few points." Bloodwave Supreme did not answer, but in his heart he passed a touch of identification. In the entire Palace of Life, only he knew that the King of 9 Calamities was a special life with perfect levels, and the sword was unparalleled, but beyond the perfect level. Life. Big Axe. It seems that the 2 of our old guys have to work harder, or they will be surpassed by these younger generations sooner or later. Bloodwave Supreme laughed. "Ha ha ha, isn't that okay?" Giant Axe laughed, and Gaffa Supreme, who sat in the void, didn't say a word, But after raising his eyelids and glancing at the battle picture, the old face with the same expression for a long time appeared to smile. The deepest part of the universe, Diwu Shrine, is located. They also received the battle pictures of Jian Wushuang and Prison Dragon. At this moment in a large hall, the halls of Diwu Temple are staring at Jian Wushuang with an ugly expression. In the first place in the hall, a majestic middle-aged man wearing a black gold crown and wearing a black gold dragon suit glanced coldly at the eye of the cadre and asked, "When did this sword, Wushuang, come out? Why isn't this seat known?" The hall is supreme, and nothing is said. It was not until a long time ago that I saw a supreme man in black. He hesitated and said, "Master Hui Huidian, I had met this man when he was in the Nine Dragons Star Wars. But this person is still in the third level of fashion. He is dominated and low in strength. He did not expect that he would have reached this stage in just tens of thousands of years." "Oh." The owner of Diwu Temple narrowed his eyes, then asked indifferently, "Extreme Blackhawk, why didn't you kill him in the first place?" Hearing the words, the Black Eagle expressed a resentment on his face and said, "Master Dian, when I was about to kill this man, the king of Juding Pavilion shot and rescued him." "The heartbeat of Judi Pavilion?" The main voice of the main hall of Diwu Temple said to himself. A coldness flashed in his eyes. After a long time, the master of Diwu Temple fell on the Black Eagle supremely. His voice said coldly, "Black Eagle, now this seat makes you immediately rush to the gate of the ancient road that dominates the sky. Once the sword is unmatched, you will kill him. In the Palace of Life, there has been a king of 9 calamities, but another king of 9 calamities must not be allowed to appear. Otherwise, my Diwu Shrine will soon be a disaster. You understand?" The Black Hawk looked at the cold eyes of the master of the Diwu Temple, and his heart suddenly became cold, and he quickly arched back and said, "I understand." The words fell, and the Black Eagle Extreme didn't dare to delay. As soon as he stepped, he left the Diwu Temple and blasted towards the starry sky. Inside the Diwu Temple, it became silent. The master of Diwu Temple raised his head again, looked at the sword Wushuang in the battle picture, and there was a flash of killing in his eyes. Xingkong Ancient Road, the 18th city. This is the dragon's pulse of Yanlong, the strongest supernatural power. If I guess correctly, the prisoner dragon should belong to the dragon's veins. The sword is troublesome. This devouring breath is the killer of Yanlong. I have read the record that a supreme Yanlong of the dragon family, under one breath, directly brings 10 large star fields with hundreds of millions of souls. It turned into ashes. Overlord and others stared at Prison Dragon and whispered their faces were filled with anxiety for Jian Wushuang. How Emperor clenched his fists, a heart even mentioned his throat. Master Bloodsword will be fine. Definitely not. He kept telling himself like this in his heart. Over 9 days. Jian Wushuang, you are really strong. But this is the strongest master that this seat has ever seen in all ages. Even if this seat is still in the supreme divine realm, it will be tricky if I meet you. A sigh of admiration emanated from the prisoner's mouth, but the coldness in his eyes did not decrease by half, but grew colder. He knew that if Jian Wushuang was immortal this time, it would be him next time. Countless syrups poured from the deepest part of his body, and then condensed in his mouth. It's just a pity that you met me. Okay, let's die for Swordsman. Mystery Pillar of Fire Dragon, Breath of Destruction. Boom! A line of fire that ran through heaven and earth and destroyed the world's pillar of fire burst out from his mouth. This pillar of horror was extremely horrible, and the smell of destruction was enough to make the world tremble and chaos boil. This is the last magical power of Prison Dragon, and it is also the best killing trick he prepared for the sword unparalleled. Jian Wushuang's black hair flew, and the whole face was reddened by the firelight. He watched this sweeping the sky, destroying the raging pillars of the world, and the divine body began to shrink until it returned to normal appearance. Next moment, his 5 knuckle fingers, holding the hilt of Wu Weapon's Excalibur, calmly spoke. Prisoner Dragon, for nearly 10,000 years, I have specially prepared a sword for you. This sword, you are optimistic. The name of this sword is Breaking dawn. Happy Mid-Autumn Festival today. Chapter 4295. The first is more. Laugh. A little bit of golden light appeared. When the sword Wushuang's voice fell, I saw the Wu weapon sword in Jian Wu's hands slammed upward. At the same time, he and Wu weapon sword turned into a golden sky at the same time, rushing towards the gushing flame. The speed of this golden light was extremely fast. Like the same lightning, it divided the sky into two sides and hit it on the pillar of flame. Can't use any words to describe the horror of this sword, the pillar of destruction that exudes the scent of destruction. After encountering this golden light, it was broken directly from the middle like a sword-stabbed tofu. Fengrui. There is no other special place in this sword, only the sharp edge that cuts off the heavens and the earth. If Yongye is the deprivation hidden behind the darkness, then this sword is crushed and crushed from the front. In the void, there were sounds of howling. Overlord, Jiu Xingzi and others felt the dazzling golden light, and they all couldn't help violently retreating backward, and reached out and covered their eyes. At this moment, under the dazzling golden light, the sun hanging over 9 days seemed to dim. With a muffled sound, the Tongtian Yanju was completely separated by the sea, breaking as many as possible. How is that possible? Prison Dragon's pupils shrank, and for the first time an unbelievable expression appeared on his face. However, he hadn't waited for his response. The golden light flashed past his neck like a golden lightning. Behind the prisoner dragon, Jin Guang, the sword warrior turned into a halt. Then Guang Hua dispersed, revealing his black hair and his expressionless sword warrior. The fierce squall wind, the sword Wushuang in black and black hair hunting. The sword Wushuang expression indifferent turned slowly. The crowd looked at this scene and couldn't help it. Seems like nothing happened? Just then. Roar. The prison dragon issued a fierce roar. And at his neck, a bloodline suddenly emerged, and endless dragon blood spewed out. Dang. The whole faucet slammed. This sword directly slashed the head of the prison dragon. This is not the end. The sky and the earth began to tremble violently. Rumble. In the horrified eyes of everyone, I saw that the earth and the sky were beginning to split. A huge sword mark gradually emerged. Under this sword mark, the entire 18th city, 100,000 miles of mountains and rivers, are penetrated by a sword mark, divided into two sides. Breaking a sword not only cut off the prisoner's head, but also split the 18 cities into two sides. Destroy the city with one sword. Hiss. There was a sound of breathless breath. Overlord, Jiuxing's son and others were all shocked. Only the master who stays in the ancient sky can know what concept can create such a terrible power with one sword. This sword is enough to kill any ultimate master in the world, said the overlord Shensheng. He is a rare immortal tyrant in ancient times, and his defense is amazing. Even if he had a battle with the prisoner dragon at first, relying on the power of the immortal fighter body, the prisoner dragon would take him at 1:30 without using the killer. No way. But now he is absolutely certain that even if he tied 10 together, he couldn't stand the sword. The Blood Sun, already hurricane, fled madly, for fear that Jian Wushuang will settle accounts with him after the fall. At this moment, it is not only inside the ancient sky, including the starry sky, countless top powers watching this battle. All of them have skyrocketed in their eyes, with a stun in their mouths. This sword is enough to match the Supreme, said Bloodwave Supreme and Great Axe Extreme. Even Governance uttered a look of surprise on his face. This sword, somewhat familiar. Immediately, Gav Supreme seemed to remember something, and his eyes flashed thoughtfully. Within the solar star field. This is the habitat of the Jinwu tribe. The battle of Jian Wushuang and Prison Dragon is also shown here. Emperor Jinwu had a somber expression, clenched his fists tightly, and said nothing. Suddenly, a low, majestic voice sounded behind him. Liner, don't bother to find this person anymore. He is not your enemy. Emperor Jinwu heard this and quickly turned around and arched. Father. The person who spoke just now is the Emperor Jinwu. Well, this child's climate has been formed. With this sword, we can see that if this child has not fallen unexpectedly, He will have a place among the people at the peak of the universe in the future. The low and majestic voice passed again. Come. But the child almost died in his hands. If this revenge is not reported, the child will not be reconciled. The Emperor Jinwu clenched his fists, and there was a dare of struggle in his eyes, and he bit his teeth and returned. Stupid. You are the son of Emperor Wu Jinwu. There is no such thing as energy structure. What has happened? The Emperor Jinwu gave a cold hum, and continued to whisper. Of course, you don't need to be afraid of him, as long as you don't deliberately offend and provoke him. After all, you are the emperor of the Jinwu family, and you cannot lose your identity. Z dare to provoke you. As long as I live, no one in this world will deceive you. Baby. I see. Emperor Jinwu took a deep breath. A flash of enlightenment flashed in his eyes, bowed his head, and replied with respect. Well, pick it up and put it down. That's the attitude of the Jinwu emperor. Emperor Jinwu's eyes flashed a sigh of relief, and then the words turned sharply and said lightly. Keep watching. The group of dragons are probably unable to sit still. Starry Sky Ancient Road. The prisoner's head was cut off by Jian Wushuang Yijian. When it didn't die easily, the dark golden dragon blood kept pouring out of his mouth. He stared at Jian Wushuang without saying a word. I prisoner dragon, I said, you died today is not me. My sword. Wushuang talked and said. Jian Wushuang stepped down from the air step by step, looked down at the prisoner dragon, said indifferently. The prisoner stared at Jian Wushuang, and when he heard the words suddenly smiled. There was a strange look in his eyes. Jian Wushuang, believe it or not, you can't kill me? Is it? Jian Wushuang's expression was dull, holding Wu weapon sword backwards, walking towards him step by step. Countless divine powers, beginning with no hands condensed in the sword. You don't believe it? The prisoner laughed lowly and shook his head and said, Swords are unparalleled, you won't understand. We dragons can only be killed by the dragons and buried in the tombs of the dragons. Even if I am expelled from the dragons, will change. The sword is expressionless and double-sided. Raising his arms, Wu Wei's Excalibur severely cuts off the prisoner's head. Ding! Chapter 4296. Second more. Under the resistance, Wu crying Excalibur in the hands of the sword, seemed to be chopped on an invisible wall, and could not fall in the slightest. Jian Wushuang, I said you can't kill me. There was a hint of irony on the prisoner's face, and a fearless smile. Next moment, then he saw a huge false image that emerged from behind him. This phantom is wearing black armor, and the black armor has a mysterious pattern. The shoulder is formed by two dragon claws, which is actually the head of the dragon. The expression of this dark shadow was indifferent, and he slightly glanced at Jian Wushuang, and said indifferently, Human, I am the Dragon 9 Enforcer Long Jiao. People of the Dragon Nation must be handed over to the 9 Dragon Nation. I will limit your time for this time. Inside, the prisoner dragon will be sent out of the ancient starry sky. Our dragon family will send someone to pick up the prisoner dragon and bring him back to the dragon family. Dragon Enforcer? Jian Wushuang's eyes froze, and as if he was oblivious, the magical power of Wu crying sword in his hand poured in madly, and then he was pressed inch by inch towards the prisoner's skull. Click! Click! In a moment, there was an overwhelming sound in the void above the prisoner's head, similar to the sound of glass breaking. Suddenly, the faces of the prisoner dragon and that dragon law enforcer changed. Human being, I'm talking to you, haven't you heard? The ghost of the dragon enforcer narrowed his eyes, and his eyes were filled with fierce coldness. Noise! Jian Wushuang sneered coldly, and Wu weapon in his hand continued to stab towards the prisoner's head. Presumptuous! Human, are you challenging my majesty now? Are you provoking the majesty of the dragons? Seeing this, the dragon enforcer was extremely furious, and opened his mouth sharply and scolded. I finally give you 3 breaths now. Now, immediately, stop the action in your hand, then send the prisoner dragon out of the ancient road to the sky. Obediently my dragons come to impose sanctions. Otherwise, all consequences are at your own risk. 3, 2, you are too noisy. Without waiting for him to finish, Jian Wushuang directly backhanded a sword and shattered the phantom of this dragon enforcer. Emo said that you are just a shadow of consciousness and do not have any divine power. Even if you are in person, you can't stop the person who I want to kill. Jian Wushuang sneered and turned over in his hands. Wu the Weeping Excalibur stabbed at the head of the prison dragon again fiercely. Prisoner, you will die today. This time, the prisoner's face finally changed greatly. Jian Wushuang, hurry up. Do you know what you are doing now? Prison dragon added angrily. Jian Wushuang heard the words. A radiant of curvaceousness evoked in the corners of his mouth, and said lightly, "Are you afraid now?" The prisoner's expression was iron blue to the extreme, and he heard the words and said, "Sword is unparalleled. Do you know what will happen to you if you kill me? That dragon law enforcer represents the majesty of the dragon, and you confuse his consciousness. The shadow is broken. The dragon will never let you go, and absolutely allow someone who provoked the dragon to survive." After a pause, Prison Dragon's face slowly eased and continued, "For the sake of today, you will have a chance to live only if you let me go. I promise that when I return to the Dragon Clan, I can say a few words for you. How is it?" "Nothing." Jian Wushuang chuckled a little laugh, and then hesitated again. The Wu crying sword in his hand was severely stabbed and inserted into the prisoner's skull. Roar! With the painful roar of the prisoner dragon, he began to struggle violently, banging wildly around. Jian Wushuang held the hilt of his sword with both hands and inserted it into the Wu crying sword of the prison dragon's head. A sharp sword force continued to explode, depriving the dragon's own power in the prison dragon's body. "Just shred it." Countless dragon blood splashed on Jian Wushuang's face. Jian Wushuang did not react at all. Facing the sorrow of the prisoner dragon, his heart was indifferent to the extreme. Overlord Jiuxing Shengzi and others watched this scene and were scared long ago. His lips trembled and said, "Slaying. Slaying dragons. Jian Wushuang is slaughtering dragons. I don't know how many years have never flowed out of the universe. Who dares to kill the dragons? This is the dragon family. The people of the dragon family are put under the control of the dragon family. This is the rule set at the beginning of the universe. Jian Wushuang dared to break this rule. Even if it is two virtual temple, to deal with the prisoner dragon, it is only to suppress it without killing him. The consideration is the reaction of the dragon race. Now Jian Wushuang first crushed the phantom of the dragon law enforcer and slaughtered the prisoner dragon. Not only are overlords and others being scared silly, even at this moment in the universe and the top powers, looking at this scene, all eyes flashed to the extreme. Well, this sword is unparalleled, really stupid. In the Taishu Temple, Bingyu Supreme snorted, and his heart had already been sentenced to death for Jian Wushuang. Dragons have inverse scales, and they die immediately. The dragon's inverse scale is his high majesty. Whoever dares to challenge the majesty of the dragons must be prepared to die. In the temple of Diwu, the owner of the temple, wearing a black gold crown and a purple gold robe, also had a smile on his face. It is unforgivable to commit evil in the sky, and it is impossible to live in evil-doing. Now it seems that without my Diwu shrine, this little guy in the temple of life will already die. Suddenly, throughout the universe, there was a discussion about Jian Wushuang slaying and slaughtering dragons. Someone sneered, and Jian Wushuang was arrogant and motivated. Others are sighing. If Jian Wushuang releases the prisoner dragon, relying on the behavior of the prisoner dragon, the dragons themselves will not let the prisoner off easily. However, Jian Wushuang took himself up. There was a hearty laugh in the Temple of Life alone. Ha 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 ha. This little guy doesn't even give the dragon's face. It's really different from ordinary people. I really like him more and more. Bloodwave Supreme laughed indifferently. However, the giant axe seemed to be a little worried, and he said, "Blood waves. In this way, I am afraid that the dragons will not let the sword unparalleled easily." Bloodwave Supreme heard the words. His eyes narrowed and sneered. Jiang Wushuang is a person in the palace of my life, and he is also a half-disciple of this seat. If the dragon family finds trouble for him, my Bloodwave will take care of him, yes. Why fear? Chapter 4297. The first is more. The prisoner is dead. Under the eyes of everyone, the body of the prisoner's dragon completely collapsed, starting from the tail of the dragon, dissipating inch by inch, and finally like a sand painting brushed by the wind, turning into dust and dissipating in the heavens and the earth. At this moment, the entire ancient sky turned into a dead silence, leaving only a heavy panting sound. Everyone looked up, staring blankly at the black figure standing in the void. He was indifferent, holding a sword in his right hand, and his brow face was so cold that he could not see joy and sorrow. But it was such an ordinary skinny figure, but now in their eyes, it looked like a Lingchen brilliant visually. There are many invincible in the universe, but only at this moment, both sides of the sword can be called true invincible. I knew that he can always do miracles. Leader Sheikh Mountain exhaled a long breath. It wasn't until the prisoner's death that his heart really fell. How Emperor dominated his face with excitement. His clenched fist loosened and held it. And the Lord Blood Sword was always the same Lord Blood Sword, never disappointing. Laugh. Along with the death of the prisoner dragon, a Qingquan ring was also broken. Among them, countless treasures broke out, and the most conspicuous was dozens of sealed monuments. The sword's eyes flickered, and the countless god's source stones, as well as dozens of sealed monuments, were collected into the ring. Immediately, Jian Wushuang stepped down from the void. When he flung his sleeves, the two black chains interspersed in the shoulder blades of How Ember dominated them, and all of them were broken immediately. Before the How Ember dominated off the stone frame, there was an invisible force to lift him up. Thank you, Lord Bloodsword. How Emperor dominated his body and shivered. His eyes could not help a flush. No one knows how much he has been tortured in the past 10,000 years. The feeling that the body is constantly being crushed and reorganized, and the soul is burned by flames. If it were changed to another person, it would have collapsed long ago. The reason why he persisted for so long was that Jian Wushuang sent a word to his brain before he died. Wait for me. Because of these short words, he waited for Sword Wushuang for 10,000 years. Finally, he waited for Jian Wushuang. You don't have to call me Lord Bloodsword, just call me Sword Wushuang. Sword Wushuang looked at How Emperor, with an apology in his eyes. If it was not for his own reasons, How Ember would not have flew into trouble, and was tortured by the prison dragon. So long the next moment, Jian Wushuang's right hand rested on the shoulder of How Emperor's dominator. A gentle divine power followed the right hand of Jian Wushuang, and poured into How Ember's dominion. He would heal his wounds and restore his power. How Ember, from now on, in this ancient starry sky, as long as I am there, you will not be bullied anymore. Thank you, Bloodsword Master. How Emperor slumped down on his knees grateful. Jian Wushuang shook his head. It is estimated that How Emperor could not change his mouth for a while, and he didn't force it. He turned to the king and said, "Come here. I want to reset the order in the ancient sky." Yes, overlords, Jiuxing Xingzi, and Ma Luo Shao Patriarch heard the words and looked at each other, with a bit of embarrassment in their hearts. Today, Jian Wushuang's strength is enough to sweep the entire starry sky alone, and no one can balance him. Jian Wushuang already asked the first person in the ancient road of the sky if Jian Wushuang wanted to kill them like a prisoner. They wouldn't have halfway. I hope the sword is unparalleled. It won't be the second prison dragon. Overlord and Jiuxing Xingzi all sighed in their hearts. Within the forces of the universe. As Jian Wushuang slayed the prisoner dragon, the picture reflected on the void suddenly came to an end. In a hurry, the entire universe is in an uproar. The sword Wushuang has a complete reputation and sensation throughout the universe. Everyone knows that in the realm of ultimate domination, there is a remarkable character. At this moment, the temple of life was boiling. Jian Wushuang slayed the prisoner dragon, sealed the gods in World War I. Jian Wushuang asked the first person who dominated Xingkong Ancient Road, and no one can check and balance. Since ancient times, the dragon slayers in the same realm have only one sword. Jian Wushuang, who will become the second person to dominate the realm after the 9 kings. The disciples of the Shrine of Life are all excited to the extreme, and they are running around to tell each other. The Temple of Life, which is one of the top forces in the universe, has been silent for too long and too long. But this time, the Supreme of the Blood Wave and the Great Axe first killed the Tysian Temple and informed the entire universe that all disciples of the Temple of Life would not allow disgrace. After the sword Wuxia slaughtered the dragon successfully, asked the first person in the ancient road of Shinkong, they felt the power of the Shrine of Life like never before. How lucky and honorable! These 8 words are deeply imprinted in the minds of every disciple in the Temple of Life. At the moment within the 6th mountain, the frost-like frost that just passed the gate looked at the high-altitude disciples of Life Shrine and found that they were all excited. They could not help but frown and stopped a shrine disciple wondering, "Dare ask what happened in the shrine?" Everyone was so excited. The apprentice of the Shrine of Life heard that the eyes turned. The news of the sword's death was unveiled some time ago, and the blockade was ordered by the Supreme Master of Blood. Now the sword has returned without double life, and asks the ancient's first person on the road, "Should I be able to say it?" After clearing his throat, the disciple of the Shrine of Life shouted in congratulations. "Ma'am, you don't know. Your husband is unparalleled, and now he is the first person in Shinkong Ancient Road." Okay. Lung Rushuang frowned, his heart darkened, and it seemed that he had missed many things during the period of retreat. Immediately she asked, "Could you tell me this in detail, brother?" Of course. The battle about Jian Wushuang and Prison Dragon began to spread out at an extremely fast speed to all parts of the universe. For a while, all parts of the universe were full of discussions about Jian Wushuang. For those who have good things, Jian Wushuang is under the supremacy and dominates. At this moment in a lonely star field in the universe. This star domain name is a virtual wind star domain, and it is not ranked in the major star domains in the universe. Resources in the star domain are scarce. Chapter 4298. Second more. Sister Qingxi, are you thinking about that person again? Rangu sat next to her with a butt, glancing at her, and said narrowly. Qingxi heard the words, and that pretty face could not help but suddenly became red angrily. Brother, what are you talking about? Don't bullshit. She opened her teeth and danced like a bravery tiger. When Rangu saw this, he laughed suddenly. I didn't say that person's name. How do you know who I'm talking about? After saying that, he reached out and rubbed Kinx's hair, and smiled and said, Although we don't have much contact with the Bloodsword brothers, but I can see that he must be a Dragon Phoenix character. Why is it liking him? Shameless. After a pause he continued. Again the master has already said it, and is willing to find the Bloodsword brother for you. Qingxi heard that her face was flushed with red, without refuting it, but she lowered her head, and did not dare to look at Rangu. The 2 jade hands squeezed the corners of the clothes tightly. At this moment a ray of light came from the sky. Rangu and Qingxi quickly got up and stood up. Master is back. Xian Guang dissipated, revealing the figure of an old man, who was the master of the water, who had swords, and had no friendship in the ruins of Tai Luo. Master, Sister Qingxi is thinking about that person again. Have you heard about the Bloodsword brothers? Rangu said with a smile. Master, don't listen to my brother talking nonsense. Qingxi gave Rangu a white look, but deep in his eyes, the color of expectation couldn't be hidden. However, today's master of the water has a strange expression. He looked at Qingxi with a complex look and slowly said, Qingxi, stop on the matter of Bloodsword. You don't have to think about it. What? When Qingxi shuddered, he quickly raised his head and looked at the master of the water The water dominated his expressionless face, and after speaking he said nothing, striding past them. Master, why? Rangu's face was anxious, and she shouted towards the back of the water Hearing the question, the water dominated. No reason. The water master stepped into a compartment. Alas! The door of the compartment was closed tightly. Outside the room, Qingxi bit his lower lip, and a mist of water gradually poured into his eyes. Rangu opened her mouth and wanted to say something, but at last she sighed, shook her head and said no more. He knew that if Master said so, then there must be a reason for that. What they didn't know was, in the chamber, the Water Witch Dominator was looking through the window, looking at the two with his hands, with helpless expression. How could he say that if the situation was not enough? Xiaoxi, it's not the reason for the teacher, but the blood sword. It is really a big man like a dragon in the sky, not someone like me who can climb up high. Cut it out, and pull it off for you soon. The news that Jian Wushuang beheaded and killed the prisoner dragon, like a tornado, scraped across every corner of the universe. Diwu Temple, Taishi Temple, Judy Pavilion. The major forces are all because of the movement of Jian Wushuang. According to rumors, Jyoti Pavilion has upgraded Jian Wushuang's treatment to Jyoti Pavilion to the highest level. The dragons that people are most looking forward to are unexpectedly silent. Everyone had predicted that the face-lost dragons would launch a stormy storm against Jian Wushuang. However, the dragons did not, as if nothing had happened. They did not mention the word Wushuang. But everyone knows that the more the dragons do, the more terrifying things are. As one of the strongest races in the universe, the dragon race is absolutely impossible to stop. The dragons are just brewing a shocking storm enough to shock the universe. At that time, this storm will not only be targeted at Jian Wushuang, including the Temple of Life behind the sword Wushuang, Supreme Bloodwave, etc., will not be spared. At the same time, in the deep sky of the ancient road, the 18th city, which had been turned into ruins, has gradually begun to recover under the protection of the rules. Inside a temple, the sword sat cross-legged, and was silently packing what he had gained after beheading the prisoner dragon. There is no need to mention the magical medicine and the source stone of the universe. The prisoner dragon is the supreme divine realm of the dragon family, plus the plunder of the ancient road in the sky for 10,000 years. Calculation. There are no less than 1 billion stones in the universe alone, and the magical medicine and some top-notch arcane treasures are piled up like garbage. Regarding these things, Jian Wushuang didn't care about it. The treasures brought out by him in the Terra ruins were enough to make him use up for several chaos periods. No matter how many of these things, Jian Wushuang is just a number. It was the monument that made Jian Wushuang very tempted. In this 10,000-year period, Prison Dragon actually collected 85 Fengshan monuments. It can be said that in addition to the Fengshan steel in the hands of Bawang, Jiuxing Xingzi, etc., all the others have been put into the hands of prisoners. Of course, now all of this naturally belongs to Jian Wushuang. The prisoner's search over the past 10,000 years has only made a wedding dress for Jian Wushuang. 85 Fengshan monuments, plus the 6 Fengshan monuments in my hands, I have 91 Fengshan monuments. It is not important whether or not to take them. Jian Wu's eyes flickered, and there was a thought in his eyes. If nothing else, now it can also be said that his sword Wushuang has received the invitation letter for the Cosmopolitan event. All that is needed is time. Converging his thoughts, Jian Wushuang continued to search for the relics of the prison dragon. Soon 2 treasures caught the sword's attention. One of them is a bronze ancient tripod without a foot. This bronze ancient tripod is square, and the tripod is covered with mysterious and obscure runes. The tripod that should have stood on 4 feet seems to have been cut off one by one, leaving only 3 legs. Quite incomplete. However, after Jian Wushuang's turbulent and strong divine power fell into this ancient tripod, it turned out to be like a stone ox entering the sea. He could not detect anything, and could not distinguish the grade. You have to know that with the magic power of Jian Wushuang now, even the cosmic law of the ultimate powers, such as Wu Wei's divine sword, you can instantly find out the reality and control. The origin of this bronze ancient tripod is afraid of extraordinary sound. Jian Wushuang's eyes narrowed, his eyes flashed with contemplation. It's just that what exactly this bronze ancient tripod is, we have to wait to verify it later. Shaking his head, Jian Wushuang ignored the bronze ancient tripod for the time being, put it into the ring, and looked at the second thing that caught his attention. That is a black dragon token. Chapter 4299. The first is more. This is Jian Wushuang picked up the token and narrowed his eyes to look. I saw on this token that the position of the handle was formed by a spread-out 9-finger dragon claw, and the tip of the token was a huge dragon head, which was roaring and roaring. Although it was a carved dead object, it was invisible. China gives people a sense of palpitations, as if there is a dragon devouring the sun and the moon, staring at Jian Wushuang stubbornly, forcing Jian Wushuang to release this token. Seeing the sword unparalleled, a snorting noise came from the nose, and the majestic divine power flowed out immediately, wiping out the breath left on this token by no one who knew it. Immediately, Jian Wushuang looked carefully at the token again. I saw the token, and a small line was engraved on it. The 5th generation of Yanlong, Long Han. Is this the true name of the prisoner dragon? Jian Wushuang flashed a thoughtful look. As one of the oldest races in the universe, the dragon race has been breeding from the first ancestor dragon at the beginning of the universe. So far, it has spawned an unknown number of chaos ages. However, it is extremely difficult for the dragon race to have children. It is nothing but, apart from the phenomenon of returning to the ancestors in general, the algebraic strength closer to the ancestors will be stronger in general. And this prison dragon want to come as the 5th generation of dragons. If I'm not mistaken, this dragon text token should be a dragon order. The thoughts flickered in the eyes of Jian Wu, and the habitat of the dragons has always been the biggest mystery in the universe. Some people say that the dragons are 90,000 miles in the deep sea. Some say that they are in the center of the earth, and some say that they are above the 18th heaven. No one can give a real answer. After all, from the beginning of the dragon clan, there has never really been a dragon clan falling to the outside world. Therefore, the news about the dragons is naturally little known. Perhaps, I can use this token to find the location of the dragons. Swordless fingers rubbed this slightly warm token. For him, the dragon is indeed powerful, and can definitely cause him a devastating blow. But the dragon will never devote all his strength to deal with it. He is unparalleled in his sword, so let alone say how much turmoil will be caused in the universe, it is too disgraceful. At most, that's just sending a law enforcer. Thinking of this, Jian Wushuang reached out and touched the sandalwood sword box set aside, a flash of coldness in his eyes. This Taro Excalibur started from the time he got the Taro ruins. Counting the time, it has been 20,000 years. For 20,000 years, the sword Wushuang will instill the temperature of the sword every day, and it is sealed in the Taro Excalibur. Until now, the sword Wushuang does not know that this Titan Excalibur has never been out of the sheath. How many swords? That is an astronomical figure that Jian Wushuang is all frightened. After thinking for a while, Jian Wushuang backed the sandalwood sword box, wore a black waist robe, and a black wide hemp hood, and stepped out of the temple. The 18th city, which was turned into a ruin because of the battle between Jian Wushuang and the prisoner dragon, has been repaired. Except for the sword marks that split the entire 18th city into two sides. The 18th city has already it seemed like nothing had changed before. In the 18th city, in the king's palace previously established by the prisoner dragon, the overlord, the 9-star holy sun, the leader of the shaking mountain, the master of the Hao emperor, and so on, stood silently on both sides of the hall. Jian Wushuang stepped in, took a natural turn and sat on the throne at the deepest part of the hall, then glanced across their faces, expressing a deep expression. Dear everyone, now the 18th city has been restored, it's also time to replan the rules of the 18th city. Overlords and others heard the words. Their hearts were shocked, and they understood that the sword Wushuang was about to perform an action. They glanced at each other silently, all sighing in their hearts, just hoping that Jian Wushuang would not go too far like a prison dragon, and just take away the few monuments from them. There was a touch of excitement on the faces of Shaking Mountain leader and Hao Ember. This ancient road with stars and sky gathers the arrogance of the entire universe. If they can bring them together, they must be a top force in the future. You should know that these arrogances are not the chief disciples of their respective sects, or the princes and sons of a certain powerful force, and they all have the hope of breaking through the supreme. If Jian Wushuang has a good relationship with them now, then Jian Wushuang will truly be in the universe is invincible. Jian Wushuang sat on the throne, glanced across their faces, took a close look at the thoughts in their hearts and said lightly, "Dear everyone, this seat wants to form a large force in the ancient road of the starry sky, named Jianmeng. What do you like?" As soon as this remark was over, Ba Wang and other people's faces were slightly changed, and there was a faint expression in their hearts. They looked at Jian Wushuang's indifferent expression, and suddenly came to understand. Jian Wushuang was not asking them, but giving they issued a notice. After a long time, Jiu Xingshengzi carefully asked, "Jian Wushuang, what do we need to do?" Jian Wushuang heard the words and said lightly, "It's very simple. If you join the Sword Alliance, the magical treasure is countless. I can even take out that monument. If I don't want to join, I will not force it." As soon as this remark came to an end, a few of the overlords heard the 3 words Feng Shenbei. All moved in their hearts, and continued to ask respectfully, "Jian Wushuang, if I wait to join the Sword League, what do we need to do?" Jian Wushuang heard a slight smile and replied, "You guys, I know what you are worried about. I am not a brutal and inhumane like Prison Dragon. The original intention of forming the Sword Alliance was to help and help each other. Shinkong Gulu, there is also a mutual response. I know that you have ancestors behind each other. Therefore, my Sword Alliance is not a compulsory ancestor, but more similar to an alliance. It's just that when everyone is in trouble, they can help each other." After a pause, Jian Wushuang continued to say, "Of course, this statement is unwarranted, and you must take an oath of law and incorporate its rules into your own rules. If you violate this oath, you must not practice it in your life." In the end, Jian Wu's bilingualism became calm. Overlords and others heard the words and looked at each other with a flash of thought in their hearts. If that's the case, it is indispensable. After all, Jian Wushuang's strength and talents are already here. It can be said with absolute certainty that as long as Jian Wushuang has not died halfway, he will definitely achieve amazing results. If he can have a good relationship with Jian Wushuang, then whether it is for himself, it's definitely a good thing, whether it's the ancestor behind him. The most important thing is that almost all Fengshen monuments are in Jian Wushou. If they want to obtain the Fengshen monument, they must rely on Jian Wushuang. A few moments later, several people nodded at the same time, kneeling down in a hurry. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.